And I believe we are live. So, welcome to the Body Count Podcast. I am We Shouldn't Be Here. I am your host, and with me, I got Bryce from the Horror Movie Talk Podcast, returning once again. He was on the last episode with, or not the last one, but one of the last ones of Paranormal Activity 2, him and David. But David will not be joining us tonight. It's just Bryce, and he's the host of his podcast. And Bryce, do you want to tell people how they can get a hold of you or where they can go if they want to hear your reviews on your podcast?
Yeah, I'm one of two of the hosts of Horror Movie Talk, and you can find us pretty easy. We got a website called horrormovietalk.com, or you can find us on any podcast platform pretty much out there. A little easier to find on Spotify for some reason, but yeah, check us out on horrormovietalk.com, or on Twitter. It's at horrormovietalk.
Sorry.
Yeah. What?
So, did you hear that?
No.
Sorry. Okay, cool. My I started playing an old video of mine on accident.
Oh no, I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it at all.
Yeah. So all of a sudden I'm narrating.
So yeah, on Horror Movie Talk, we reviewed.
So I guess I'll tell our listeners what I just went through. Is the reason why I'm a little bit unprepared. It's because Bryce and I planned on doing this starting at 7:00, and I got off work at a really good time, 3:30. Usually takes me around 15 minutes to get home. I get on the freeway and instantly it's back-to-back traffic, instantly. And it's not unusual to have back-to-back traffic on my drive home, but it was lasting a really long time. So my wife calls me and she's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I was like, "I'm in traffic and it sucks." She's like, "That sucks." And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I'm just waiting to come across the accident that's slowing us down." And then like an hour and a half later, there's no accident still. So I get on my phone and I look up maybe if I can see something online, traffic reports or something. And it says this, this freeway is closed because somebody is trying to jump off of the overpass and kill themselves. And there's like the special team out there trying to convince them not to and everything. And I'm like, God dang it, just jump already so I can go home. But no, so it took me almost 4 hours to get home. So I just immediately got home, contacted Bryce, and yeah, so I'm pulling up my stuff as we go, and we are going to just wing it and do our best we can. And we're going to talk about Avengers Endgame, the final Avengers movie for our group of heroes, minus the future Spider-Man and Black Panther movie coming out. But this is it. This is going to be mad spoiler heavy. Okay, so if anybody's in, the chat right now, if anybody's listening to this and they haven't seen this movie, trust me, this is not a movie that you want to just listen to and think you'll just watch the movie later. No, I'm going to spoil the crap out of this, and you're not going to want to miss it. Bryce, would you agree on that, or do you feel like they need to? It doesn't matter if they get spoiled. What do you think?
I don't know. There's a certain amount of it that's spoiled just from. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry. Hold up. Are you talking?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I muted. I'm sorry. I muted you.
That's no problem. Yeah. I mean, there's a certain amount that's already spoiled since some other movies are coming out, but yeah, it's better to go in blind because there's some good stuff that pays off if you haven't already been spoiled.
Right. I remember. Okay, so from this moment forward, I'm not going to give anybody a chance to listen any farther without being spoiled. So from here on, I'm gonna give you 10 seconds to just close YouTube right now because we're gonna spoil it as of 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, late. You're gonna get spoiled. Okay. Going into this movie, I wasn't excited, to be honest. I didn't even want to go see it in theaters. It's my wife actually surprised me by buying the tickets without me knowing. And then she's like, "Hey, on Tuesday, we're going to go see Endgame." And I'm like, "All right, cool. Like, I don't care, but cool. Because I'm excited to go on a date." That's all I really cared about because I haven't been too invested in the MCU. I remember when the first Iron Man came out, I was 18 and I saw it and I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Haven't really seen anything like that besides, Raimi's Spider-Man's back in early 2000s. They haven't really had many good superhero movies. And and then I remember Iron Man 2 came out and I didn't even see that. And then 3 and I kind of saw it and I thought it sucked. And then all these, Thor came out and I saw that one. And I thought that was kind of boring and lame. So I didn't have these ideas that the Marvel Cinematic Universe was going to be like the biggest, coolest thing ever in Hollywood history, pretty much. Um, so when Infinity War came out, I remember I really wanted to see that because I thought, everybody's going to see it, and I want to kind of be in the loop. And I have seen majority of the movies, but at that point, I hadn't even seen Thor Ragnarok. So when the movie started, I was like, "Where are they?" And I was like, "Who's that dude with the dreads?" And why is Loki all beat up? You know what I mean? Like I didn't know anything about it because I didn't see Ragnarok. It wasn't until after I saw Infinity War that I went back and watched Ragnarok, and I hadn't seen Doctor Strange either. So I knew who the character was of Doctor Strange, but I didn't know his origin or how he got his powers or what he could do. I just knew he was a sorcerer. So so like I said, when Infinity War came, I was kind of blind a little bit to it. I thought it was cool, kind of, but I remember leaving the theaters after the snap, and I remember being like, "That's it? Like that's the whole movie? This movie sucks." Like that's what I thought, because I didn't know until talking to people afterwards that it was a part one. I had no idea because people were like, "Don't you read the comics?" And I'm like, "No, I've never read a comic in my life." And they're like, "Yeah, it's Infinity War, like it's the war. It's part one of part two." And I'm like, "Oh, well, I guess I kind of felt like they should have told me, you know what I mean, as a non-comic book reader, like this is going to be part one."
Well,
So
yeah. I mean, at the end in the credits, it says that it'll continue, right? Thanos will return. Didn't it?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
afterwards,
I've watched the Marvel movies from the very beginning, and I've always been a really big fan. And I used to read Marvel comics, mostly Spider-Man. David, my co-host on Horror Movie Talk, he's still pretty big into comics. Not so much Marvel, but um, and yeah, ironically, he's still like has a subscription box at the local comic book store, but he doesn't care to see most of these superhero movies just because. I mean, you pretty much know what you're going to get. But yeah, I
yeah.
mean, it's been a long series. So Endgame is the 22nd or 23rd Marvel Cinematic Universe movie,
It's the
which is
22nd.
super impressive. And
Yeah, I mean, it is. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you don't need to see all of them to understand it, but it sure helps.
So if somebody looks at, so my brother, for instance, he, somebody in the comments says Hail Hydra, nice. He's never seen any of Marvel movies. He's not like into that stuff. But I texted him and I was like, dude, I saw Endgame, and he was like, oh, that's cool. He's like, do you have to see the other movies to know? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, then I'm never gonna see it. I'm like, all right, that's fine. But it got me thinking. For anybody else who hadn't seen them and wants to see Endgame or Infinity War or both, what movies do you feel are necessary that you need to see in order to understand Infinity War?
You got to see Iron Man, and you got to see the Captain America ones, um, and all of the Avengers ones. Um, and then you're probably good enough. The Thors are kind of optional. The Hulk ones are definitely optional. Um, I mean,
I feel like you don't need to see
the
any of
Incredible
them.
Hulk wasn't even part of the MCU
Yeah.
because it was before the real start. But um, yeah, I mean, most of them are optional except for Iron Man and like the Captain Americas and the Avengers. I think those are pretty much it. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing about the MCU movies is there's none of them that are terrible. Like there's none that I left the theater and just thought it was bad. They're all like very serviceable to good. Um, the yeah, and some of them are just really impressively good, like the The first Avengers movie and Infinity War was just, for the amount of moving pieces in it, the amount of characters and like storylines that are intertwining, they really pull it off really well.
Yeah, I would have to agree. It's the way they do it. It comes together extremely well. You know, there's so much that the writers and the directors that they have on their plates, and you know that if you give Spider-Man too much screen time, but not Cap, people are gonna be pissed. Or if you give, you know what I mean, Cap too much screen time, but then you don't give Iron Man enough, people are gonna be pissed too. So you really need to know how to juggle your pieces and know how to give enough screen time and also move the story along and also make sure everything is perfectly connected and intertwined with the previous movies to where nobody can look back and say like, hey, well, you know, if that person did this and how come they can do this, that doesn't make sense. You know, you have to make sure everything's lined up perfectly because there are people who dissect these movies like frogs, and they're going to complain hardcore if you don't get everything perfectly right. And I do feel like there are flaws in some of the movies. This movie too, I think there's a few flaws, but I just think they did a spectacular job putting all the pieces together and making it just phenomenal, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that I
Um,
think they do really well with the writing is that they stay really true to the character. I think every one of the Marvel characters has an a definable and unique personality, and that's sometimes what gets lost with other movie universes that try to establish themselves. They just kind of they don't establish the differences between the characters, so they don't properly utilize how they can play off of each other. But yeah, the Marvel movies, all the characters are really strong, and so that kind of carries most of it.
yeah, and this is what has me worried for Phase 4, as they call it, is it's just honestly not caring as much about the new Avengers that will be going forward because you know we like our main famous Avengers. You know what I mean? We don't want to see, like I said, we're in spoilers. So if you're here, you've been warned. I don't want to see the Falcon as new Cap. I don't mind that he is, but I'm not going to care as much as I care about Chris Evans being Cap. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I think
yeah,
one of the things is that also helps the MCU is that it's run by someone that's been in Marvel, the comics side of it. So Kevin Feige, I think he was just pretty well versed with the comics. And the thing about having the comics and these universe wide comic storylines to pull out of, to pull reference material out of, is that they know it works. They know what sold in the comic book line, so they know it's going to translate to the screen really well too. Um, and you know, stuff like that, switching out characters and kind of mixing up the ethnicity or the sexes of the characters is uh, a very common trope in modern comics. Like Thor was a woman for some time. I know that there's several versions of Spider-Man, several versions of Captain America at any given point. So I think they know what they're doing, and just as long as they hire quality people, it'll still be satisfying.
yeah. As long as they take their time. I mean, when Iron Man came out, I remember people being like, "Iron Man, like for real? Like why Iron Man? You know, why not Spider Man or something like that? Someone bigger." But you know, obviously he kickstarted the MCU, and I think no one in their right mind right now after seeing Endgame has anything bad to say about Iron Man. You ready to get into this movie though?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So it was when was this? When did this come out? Uh
April 26th. That was my birthday.
26. Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah,
Happy
thanks.
belated birthday. Released date April 26th in the United States. It was directed by the Russo brothers, Anthony and Joe Russo, produced by Kevin Feige. based on the Avengers by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. And there's many, many, many stars of this movie. I'm just going to read the ones Wikipedia has listed right here. We got Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Hemsworth, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, Don Cheadle, Paul Rudd, Brie Larson, Karen Gillan, Denai Guerrera, Bradley Cooper, and Josh Brolin. This movie, let's see, has a runtime of 181 minutes. It was a very long movie. I think, what does that come out to? 3 hours, 2 minutes, I thought I heard someone say. The budget for this movie this is insane, in the membrane, $356 million. $356 million. Box office, as this says currently right now, $1.6 billion. So, I mean, I think they broke even, at least, right?
Yeah, it's
A
set
little bit.
it's set several records, so it was a good investment on their part, I'm sure.
I've heard from many people, in my own opinion, that it's on track to be the #1 highest grossing movie of all time, which right now currently is held by Avatar from James Cameron. And I don't know how much of that has right now, but what I do find unfair that Avatar did, I love Avatar, I praise that movie, but one thing that I think is unfair is I don't believe it should have the #1 spot for highest grossing, because it was in the theaters for an extremely long time, and longer than most movies, and then it left theaters, and then it came back to theaters. And so it made more money. So how is that fair? Because you can't have every other movie like this. This movie is not going to leave theaters and then in 2 months going to come back to the theaters.
Yeah, that's why the record that it broke was the highest grossing for just a certain number of days. So I think it was the first 5 days opening. It has the record for it. Yeah, with like the box office records, there's a couple outliers. Avatar, not only for the reasons that you said that it left and came back to theaters, but also the big selling point of Avatar was that it was a 3D movie, like very, very special 3D, and 3D tickets were much more expensive. So a lot more money was spent to see it. And then the other outlier is Gone with the Wind, which I mean played for years and years and years and would come back and all the time. So that's why that's always at the top of the list too. But
Oh,
yeah, this one is like the culmination of 2021 movies before it and building up an audience and getting people hyped for this particular storyline. And yeah, they cashed in.
oh, they did, and they made their cash back, no doubt. And I think what's the difference between those two other movies you just mentioned, Avatar and Gone with the Wind, is that people saw Avatar for the 3D effects. Like, did you see Avatar? It's the craziest thing I've ever seen in 3D. And then people went back and saw it just for the experience of it. Gone with the Wind, I'm sure they went because they heard it was a good story, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. People who went to this movie because they're invested in something. And for people to be this invested to make 1.6 billion already, 1.2 opening weekend, that says something. That's not just your like, oh, you guys want to see superheroes do something cool. That is actually an invested. What is it? It's been 2000. It's been 11 years since the first MCU movie came out, and people have been obsessed with this stuff since then. And I just really think it speaks for itself, the success that it has. Honestly, it beat Star Wars opening night with 60 million, I believe, and Star Wars Force Awakens opened with 57 million, I think. So it actually beat that. So for this to beat Star Wars is like the legendary stone that they don't talk about in this movie. You know what I mean? It's like the stone that brings in the money and the cash, and this movie beat it. So congrats to Marvel. Let's get into the plot. How I'm gonna do this is try to break it up into 3 spots, like 3 sections: the opening act, the middle of the movie, and then the end of the movie. So try and just follow along with me as I read this. And first things first, does my mic sound okay? I know somebody commented on the live stream saying that there was a little bit of feedback, or not feedback, but like static. Do you hear anything, or do I sound fine?
Um, I mean, there's a little bit of static on my end, but I think that's just my mixer, and it's not. Um, I don't think it's what's being broadcast. It's just what I hear.
Is it staticky for me too? Somebody said. Is it okay? Well, it might just be my internet. I got Comcast and they suck. But if everybody can just kind of bear with me. There might be a little bit of static, but let's get through the plot, and I'll try and wing this. All right, so here we go. 3 weeks after Thanos used the Infinity Stones to disintegrate half of all life across the universe, Carol Danvers rescues Nebula and Tony Stark from deep space. They return to Earth and join the remaining Avengers: Natasha, Bruce Banner, Steve Rogers, Rocket, Thor, and James Rhodes. Using Nebula's knowledge, they find an injured Thanos on an unguarded planet and intend to retake the stones to reverse his action, but find he has already destroyed them to prevent further use. An enraged Thor beheads Thanos. 5 years later, Scott Lang escapes the quantum realm and meets Romanoff and Rogers at the Avengers compound. Okay, I'm going to stop right there because it went a little bit farther than I wanted to go right now. So let's talk about the opening. It starts off, first of all, with Hawkeye. And I think I did myself justice before this movie came out on accident, because it was the Sunday before the Tuesday that I went to go see it, and I was waiting to watch Game of Thrones, and my kids were still awake, and I can't watch it until they go to sleep. So my wife and I were just flicking through Netflix trying to trying to find something, and she put on Infinity War, and luckily I had already watched about 3/4 of it like a month ago. So it started where I finished watching it, and it started pretty much right when they're in the middle of fighting at Black Panther's place, Wakanda. And so from it wasn't that much longer, and then I finally got to watch the snap again and watch everybody go away. And then the movie ended, and then 2 days later, I watched this movie. So I actually, it's not like I had to wait a year to watch Endgame from Infinity War. I was like 2 days previous, so I had that in my emotions and my thoughts right before I saw this movie. So when it opened up with Hawkeye and he's with his two boys, his daughter and his wife, and he's teaching his daughter how to do archery, and the wife is asking, who wants mustard and stuff on and mayonnaise on their hot dogs. And then Hawkeye turns around, and then he turns around again, and his daughter's just gone, and then his whole family is gone. And the way that happened was very like emotional from the start. Like I really felt Hawkeye's pain right then, watching his family go away. What did you think about that opening scene?
Yeah, I think it set the tone really well because, I mean, the end of Infinity War was a real downer, and you have to um, show the emotional tone where it left off, and using Hawkeye and his family was really, really effective in setting that. Just seeing his entire family, wife, and kids just disintegrate, well, not really in front of him, but um, right around him.
Yeah, that was insane. Um, Maybe you remember this because I'm drawing a blank. When they showed the opening Marvel Studios 10, opening that they always do, and it flips through all the different heroes. Was that before Hawkeye or right afterwards? Or you know what I mean?
Sorry, say that again. What was it?
When they have the opening Marvel sequence and it shows like all the heroes, and then it says Marvel Studios 10. You know what I'm talking about?
You're right. It that happens after the Hawkeye scene. It opens right. It was actually kind of surprising because it went right from a trailer to Hawkeye. I'm like, oh, they're
Yeah.
starting.
Right, that is what happened. Okay, so what were your thoughts about it being that way? I love that it opened without the Marvel thing. I liked that. But when they did the Marvel opening, they had some sort of like folky pop music playing over it. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Um, yeah. I can't remember the song in particular, but it was recognizable to me. But yeah, it was a folky rock type of song. It's kind of like reminiscent of The Watchmen when they opened with "The Times Are Changing" in the credits of that one. I think it was a kind of a similar tactic.
What did you think about them not opening with the Avengers theme?
Well, I mean, the Avengers theme is very triumphant, and so it would not match the tone of the opening to have a heroic theme. Um, I think it was a good choice.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's the first time I asked somebody about that. So it's nice to hear an opinion because for me, I didn't care for it. I didn't. It was weird. It was like watching WWE or something and then listening to Britney Spears in the background. Like it doesn't have the same like impact. Like I want to watch like rock music if you're seeing wrestling or monster trucks or something. You want like metal. But but it was weird and it reminded me of how I felt when I watched Rogue One in the theaters and it started and it didn't start with da, 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 you know what I mean? The opening Star
Right.
Wars music and the crawl, it just opened.
Right.
And I was like, this feels weird because I'm used to Star Wars opening with the big Star Wars letters and the Star Wars music, and it didn't have that. And it kind of threw off the feeling of Star Wars for me when I saw Rogue One. And that's kind of how I felt about this one. Like it kind of threw it off a little bit for me because I didn't have the normal huge, like you said, triumphant opening musically, and so I just kind of felt a little bit weird. But I mean, a lot of people liked in Rogue One they didn't have the crawl and they didn't have the Star Wars music, and it sounds like you were fine with them not having the triumphant Avengers music yet, and that's cool. That's fine with me. All right, so past that, you get to Nebula and Tony Stark. They're on the spaceship, and it's been like 22 days or 23 days. They're in space, barely eating any food, barely drinking any water, and pretty much they're on their last day of oxygen. And then from nowhere comes Captain Marvel. She just shows up, glowy eyes, looking Super Saiyan, and saves the day. Like, where did she come from? I'm asking you. Do you know where she came
Um,
from?
yeah, she kind of just flew off into space at the end of her movie. And I mean that her movie was based in the 90s, so none of the characters had even heard or knew of her existence. And I mean, that's basically what happens in this movie too. She like appears and then immediately disappears for most of the movie. And it was I've heard it compared to, I don't know if you're a Simpsons fan, but the Poochie episode where
No, I'm not.
so there's an episode of The Simpsons where Itchy and Scratchy um, to hype up or to get more interest for Itchy and Scratchy, they add a new character called Poochie, and everyone hates him. And then they kill him off suddenly, and they just he flies off. It just looks like a hand takes the film that Poochie is drawn on and lifts it off the camera and says, Poochie had to return home to his home planet. He died on the way there. So it,
Oh,
it kind of felt like that here. It's like Captain Marvel has to return to her home planet. Bye.
did you see Captain Marvel?
I did. Yeah, I've seen all of them.
So did you see the end credit scene or the mid credit scene?
Um, yes, and I can't remember what it is.
So what it is it's Black Widow and all them. They're standing there and they're staring at the pager that Nick Fury had at the end of Infinity War, and they're like, "What's going on? I don't know. It's just been." Searching and searching and searching, and all of a sudden they turn around and Captain Marvel is standing right there, and she's like, "Where's Fury?"
Oh, that's right. I remember now.
Yes. So that's how she became in contact with them. But from that point to the point we see her in Endgame, how did she know where Tony and Nebula were? You know what I mean? Did she just fly into space and just look for spaceships and just find one? Or was she sent there by the Avengers? And if she was, how did they know that Tony Stark even survived the snap? Um, I just kind of felt a little weird that she just shows up and they weren't like he wasn't like, oh, how did you find me? And she's like, oh, I tracked your coordinates or something like that. She just showed up, and I was like, what? Because I'm already pretty jaded, honestly, about Captain Marvel. I don't like Brie Larson as Captain Marvel at all. I hated her in her own movie, and I was really curious to see how she would do in this movie. And I can say that I like her a little bit better in this movie than I did in her own, but not by much because until you see her again at the end, I did not like her interactions with people and the way she talks and how freaking cocky she is. I can't stand it.
Yeah, the thing with me with Captain Marvel is that they it just wasn't a strong character. I couldn't even understand what they're trying to go for with the character. Um, like they kind of said like, oh, she's resilient, I guess. Like if she gets knocked down, she'll stand back up again. But not. I mean, I couldn't tell you what her personality is, and I don't know whether that's the writing or whether that's Brie Larson. But yeah, I also was not a huge fan of Captain Marvel.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a little writing because she is, from what I've heard, supposedly the strongest of them all, you know. And I think with that type of power comes a little bit of arrogance and cockiness, especially if you've just always had that power and it wasn't something she had to really achieve. And so she's probably just pretty cocky about it. But I think it's also Brie Larson. I think it's her face. I think it's the way she looks at people. She looks at people very condescendingly. Like she even mentions right before they go to attack Thanos, she looks at him and she goes, I'm gonna go kill Thanos. Like, you don't even know Thanos. You don't know what he looks like, how strong he is. He took out half of the population, and you're just going to be like, I'm gonna leave. Like, where are you going? I'm gonna go kill Thanos. Like, stop. You know what I mean? like I really want to see her get her freaking butt kicked. You know what I mean? Like, be like, stop being so cocky. You just got whipped.
Yeah, I think she suffers the same problem that Superman suffers in the movie, is that it's just not an interesting character to have basically godlike powers and every superpower that you would need, because there's never any danger, and it's hard for to build a personality around. See, the thing with like Superman, the most interesting part of him is Clark Kent. you know, when he's Clark Kent, it's amusing because he that he's all powerful and super commanding, and Clark Kent's a schlub acting. He's Superman acting like um, a nerd. And so it kind of makes it informs what the character of Superman is, and uh, along with just his upbringing in the American Midwest and Midwest values. But I'm going off on a tangent. Like that's one of the reasons why I don't like Man of Steel, is that it just takes everything interesting about Superman, and there's not much, and then it just gets rid of it. And so now we just have this brooding, all powerful being, which is not interesting to watch for 2 hours. And that's the same problem with Captain Marvel. Is she's super powerful and she knows it now, and that's just not interesting to watch. I don't know, not to me.
That's how I felt when I watched her solo movie. Was okay. There's no threat. There's nothing that can stop her. So where's the threat? Like I remember watching Smallville. I don't know if you ever watched that. That's that Superman in pretty much in high school show from back in the day, and he was super strong too because he's Superman. But I did like that in a lot of episodes he would get hurt by kryptonite, and they would use it effectively against him. So there were actual feelings. I remember they put a necklace of kryptonite around him and tied him up, and he was like losing energy and power in life because of the kryptonite that was destroying him. And so I really liked how they did it with him in the show. But when it comes to the Man of Steel and when it comes to Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel, there's no threat and it's boring. You don't want to see somebody who's so strong that there's no way to like really destroy them. So I don't know. Let's move on from Captain Marvel. I have a lot. I could do a whole podcast on why I don't like her and Brie Larson as her. But let's talk about the rest of the movie because there's a lot of better stuff than her to waste our time on. Um, so they're all together. They see Thor, they see Hulk, they see Black Widow, and all them. They're all standing there. Thor is pissed off because he feels a lot of regret that he didn't aim for the head, and he is the one who could have stopped him from snapping his finger, but he missed, and he's just feeling a lot of self regret on that, and he feels responsible. And Tony Stark and Cap are just like going at each other's throats because Iron Man is basically like, I should have built an entire world-sized thing of iron around the world, and then we wouldn't have this problem that we had. But no, Captain America wanted to be all positive, and we'll be able to do this together. And and they just keep going back and forth on it and stuff to the point where Tony even pulls his heart thing off, and he's like, just pretty much stick this up your butt, and then he like passes out. And but then they have the idea, okay, we've been tracking energy fields and stuff in space. There's Thanos. This was the last big energy surge. Let's go get him. And dude, when they showed Thanos and he's like, you can kind of hear him go, ugh, ugh, like as he's walking, and you can kind of see that something's wrong with him and he's, really slow. And I kind of thought to myself, like, oh, is he like dying? You know what I mean? Like, is him being on this planet by himself? Is he losing resources and stuff? Um, but then you get to see that he's all burned a lot, like burned on his side and his arm is jacked up and stuff. And you're like, whoa, something happened to him. And then out of nowhere, boom, just Captain Marvel's just beams just go in, and I did think it was cool. She does this like cool little like wrap thing and puts him in a headlock, and then Thor comes in, and the Hulkbuster comes to the floor, and they got him down, and what I can say that I really appreciated about the trailer for this movie is that almost everything that they showed in the trailer happens up to this point in the movie. And they they didn't give anything away because I thought that was going to be almost like the entire movie. But then you get to see what happens to Thanos, and they chop his arm off to get the gauntlet real quick. He's in the middle of talking, and Thor just cuts his head off. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
What
it is.
was
It
your
is
thoughts
very
about that?
unexpected. Yeah, it's very unexpected. I mean, they spent an entire movie previous to this one trying to defeat him and couldn't do it because he was too powerful. And they did it within a couple minutes the second time they attempt it, because he doesn't have the Infinity Stones anymore.
Yeah, because he destroyed him, and he said it nearly killed him trying to do that. Um, and when he cut off the head, like it was unexpected, but then I was thinking, okay, I had two thoughts that went through my head at this point. One, he goes, "I used the stones to destroy the stones," and I was like, "Okay, I don't know anything about the comics or how this ends or anything, but you have to somehow bring them back. And how are you going to do that?" I thought everybody speculated, oh, they're going to use the time stone to go back in time and reverse things. And then when he said, "I destroyed them," I was like, whoa, how are they going to write themselves out of this one? And then I'm like, okay, so they're going to take Thanos prisoner and they're going to figure out a way for him to somehow, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, chop. And I was just like, oh my God, like now I literally have no idea where this movie is going to go. And then I started thinking, oh, they're gonna have some sort of new villain, somebody that's bigger and badder than Thanos that's they're gonna have to stop. Because I literally just started like brainstorming while I was sitting in my theater seat trying to figure out what's gonna go on because they just killed Thanos. And after there they kind of just leave, and then you see that marker that says 5 years later. And I was like, 5 years later? You mean they haven't figured it out yet? Like, what have they been doing for 5 years? And then you get to see Cap. He's like the head of a kind of like I don't know. The best way I can describe it is like AA, but for just emotional distress. What would you call that? What would you call that?
Yeah, like a support group.
There you go, support group. That's what happens when you do live streams. You don't get to stop and think about what you want to say and then edit it out later. You kind of have to sound like a goofball. But yeah, support group, and he's kind of like the head of that, and everyone's just kind of there talking, sharing their stories. And the guy who talks about going on the date, did you know that's one of the Russo brothers?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's I don't know which one he is, but he's one of them, and he's talking about going on the date with the dude, and the guy's crying, and then he cries when he gets dessert and everything, and everybody's just still not over 5 years later, not over the fact that half the world is gone. It's still hard for everybody, and this is the moment that I've heard on many podcasts already when they talk about this movie. This is the moment when they introduce their first openly gay character into the MCU. And for me, I don't care if you're gay or not gay, and I think there should be more gay characters in movies and TV shows, and I think there should be more black people, and I think there should be more women, with bigger roles and stuff. I'm totally pro progression when it comes to this kind of stuff. But what I'm not okay with is when they do it like this and it seems forced. Did it seem that way to you at all? Like, so I was going on a date last night. He ordered this, and you're like, oh, so he's gay. Good job. Check that off your list. Good job, you guys. You put a gay character in here. Like, for me, it's like, why don't you have just like an actual gay character? Like, do you watch Walking Dead?
I used to. I haven't watched it in years though.
Okay, well, I don't know how far you got in that show, but they introduce a gay couple into that show. Well, actually, the first gay person they introduce is a lesbian, and then they introduce a gay guy, and he's got a boyfriend, and they live together and everything, and they even have a kissing scene and stuff. And I'm like, look, if you're gonna have a gay character, like, put a gay character in there and like allow him to be him. You know what I mean? Allow him to be gay on screen. Don't have some sort of exposition where you're like, yeah, so I went on a date with a guy, and then that's it. You know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, we did our checklist. We have a gay character. Don't be mad at us. It's like, for me, like, that sounds a little bit more insulting than if you actually had a real gay character. You know what I mean? I don't know. What do you think about that?
You know, you know what? I, I might have noticed, but I didn't remember it, or I'm not even sure if I noticed it in the theater that he was gay or not.
Hmm.
Uh, so I don't know. Not to crap on your point or anything, but I don't think it made an impact on me.
Okay.
But yeah, I
Yeah, that's
agree.
cool.
When there's stuff that it's like, all right, let's get the check boxes. Let's make sure that every sitcom has, every minority and orientation represented before we get it gets greenlit. Um, I don't know. I think it's a little arbitrary, but I understand the motivations and the reasoning behind it, and I support those motivations and the reasonings. But um, you know, as a cisgendered white male, um, I just want to see more of me.
Oh yeah. I just I don't mean to keep talking about this subject and going on when we have so much more to talk about, but when it came to Captain Marvel and she was a woman superhero, like the first besides Black Widow, but she was her first solo woman lead to be a superhero. That's cool. I'm fine with that. But what I don't like is when it's so woman that it's like, come on. You know what I mean? You're kind of like eliminating guys now out of it. You know what I mean? Like, how about instead of trying to overly be gay or overly be a feminist movie or overly be like even in us, like, I'm glad that there's African American people, starring in their own stuff now. That makes me happy to see this progression that we have in America finally. You know what I mean? Everybody deserves every right. But like, sometimes it's like, then it's an all black cast, like Black Panther, besides the one white guy and stuff. And it's like, guys, like, look, stop being so either all the way to the right or all the way to the left with everything. Let's have some middle stuff. You know what I mean? Like, let's just integrate everybody into movies without trying to be like, okay, like you said, and I said, well, let's have our checklist before we even start this. We're gonna have to have this and have that. Like, let's just make everything normal and just put everybody in it and make everybody happy because everybody's a part of something. Let's not have anything be predominantly anything anymore. Let's just have everything be equal. That's how I feel. So the only reason I mentioned that is because I know you said you didn't notice it, but a lot of other people noticed it. That he says, I went on my first date. He started crying at this, so he went on a date with a guy. Which, hey, that's cool. But he's supporting that guy, and Cap is basically saying just like, that's what you got to do. I'm happy to hear that you, even though you went, you guys cried at dinner, you guys still went out and took the steps that it takes, and that's the hardest part. We all just need to learn how to take our steps forward and learn how to deal with this. They've given up. This isn't like Avengers Assemble every weekend and we're trying to think of new ways to get everybody back. They gave up on this fact, and it's over with. You know what I'm saying? It's done. Like, these people are gone. We just need to learn how to move on instead of thinking about the past. And so now this gets us to our next spot where you see a storage facility and you see the van from Ant-Man, that van, and you see a mouse walking on the control panel that's inside of the van, and or not a mouse, but a rat steps on something, everything lights up, and all of a sudden shoots out of the back Paul Rudd, aka Ant-Man. He shoots out, and he's in his Ant-Man uniform, and he escapes from the quantum realm. And he's just like, what the heck? Like, what has been going on? And he's running around town, and he's looking all over the place, and everything is like abandoned cars. There's trash everywhere. There's overgrown weeds. And he's like, sees all these missing posters, and then he's in San Fran, and he sees those big plaques that basically says like the vanished, and it has everybody's names. And he's just like, oh my god, and he's looking for his daughter's name, Cassie Lang, and he ends up finding Scott Lang, his name, and he's like, people think I'm freaking dead. And then so he finds his way over to Captain America. Is it the Avengers place, like the Avengers ground headquarters? Is that where he goes?
Yeah, that's right.
Avengers headquarters. Yeah. So he goes there, and before that scene happens, Natasha, aka Black Widow, she's sitting there, and she's basically like the head of the Avengers at this point, and she's having kind of Skype conversations with Captain America, or not Captain America, Captain Marvel, who has this new rockin' haircut, and then Denai Guerrera, who whatever her name is, and then a few other people, and she's just like, "Hey, are you guys handling this problem? Are you handling this problem over here?" Denai Guerrera, there was an earthquake underwater. Are you handling that? She's like, no. It's just like basically like it's kind of like Black Widow is trying to hold on to the Avengers, but there's nothing to avenge. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think up to that point? With the Scott Lane escaping, the rat that let him out, him looking for his name, seeing his daughter, and then Black Widow talking to everybody, and then right till Ant-Man comes up to headquarters. What do you think about all that stuff?
I think it was a good choice because Ant-Man was a much lighter character. His movies were a lot more fun.
Mm,
And I mean, it's Paul Rudd, so he's kind of naturally a goofball. And so up to his arrival on the film, it's been pretty dire and depressing. And it's a good way to shift the tone to bring Paul Rudd to be uh, the voice of saying, "Come on, guys, let's do this. Let's find some solutions." And I think I have a way that we could do it. And because yeah, even then, the Avengers up to that point, excuse me, up to that point are just being just brooming, just sweeping up the scraps of crime that's around the world and around the universe, I guess, with Captain Marvel. But yeah, they're pretty pretty dour throughout until Ant-Man shows up.
Yeah, they're pretty bummed out, and then he shows up, and he's just like, "I can't stop thinking. I can't stop thinking about this." And I know it sounds silly, but what if we somehow reversed time and we went back in this? And they're like, "You mean time travel?" He's like, "No, not time travel. More like, yeah, okay, yeah, time travel." And like that part got a huge laugh in my theaters, and I was like, "Oh my god! Like they're really gonna do time travel? Like, okay, how are they gonna do this? This is pretty cool, you know?" Um, and so then I'm gonna read this part of the plot to kind of catch us up a little bit. So 5 years later, Scott Lang escapes the quantum realm and meets Natasha and Steve Rogers at the Avengers compound. Lane explains that he experienced only 5 hours while being trapped in the quantum realm, theorizing that the quantum realm allows time travel. The three ask Stark to help them retrieve the stones from the past so they can reverse Thanos' actions in the present. I'm sorry, but he refuses out of fear of losing his daughter Morgan. After talking with his wife, Peppa Potts, Stark relents and works with Banner, who has merged his intelligence with the Hulk's body to stabilize travel in the quantum realm. Banner and Rocket go to New Asgard, the Asgardian refugees' new home in Norway, to recruit a drunken, overweight Thor. Romanoff heads to Tokyo to recruit Clint, a Hawkeye, now a ruthless vigilante, following the disintegration of his family. Okay, so up to this point, they're kind of getting everybody back together, and they go up to Tony and they're asking him, "Hey, we need your help. You're the smart dude. We need you to help us figure out this time travel thing." And at this point, luckily his wife didn't get clept away, and he has a daughter now. He's a really old dad, I was thinking, and he has a daughter and he doesn't want to. He's like, "Look, I miss the people that are gone. And I regret what happened, but I have a daughter, I have a wife. Like, things are up for me right now. I don't want to do anything to risk that." And I know the Iron Man from before he had a kid would have been like, "Yeah, well, let's do this. Let's figure this out." But I know you have a kid, right?
Yeah, I have 3 actually.
Wow, I have two. So I know you and I can both relate that the moment you have a child, priorities shift, and the way you view life and the world views and things that you do from that point forward change dramatically. Would you agree or not agree?
Oh yeah. I mean, I can't imagine taking a path that might erase my child from existence with time travel. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And Tony Stark has worked very hard his whole life and sacrificed a lot to protect the world as Iron Man, and he deserves some happiness, especially after half the world is eliminated. So yeah, it makes sense, and it works really good as a plot point.
Yeah, definitely. And I just kept thinking, I'm like, I don't know how to feel about the Avengers against Tony Stark right now because they're kind of looking at him like, "Tony, come on, you need to help us. Come on, like, don't be selfish. Like, you're the guy who can do this. Let's do this." And Stark is looking at his daughter like, "You're asking me to do something that might eliminate my daughter's existence. Like, are you kidding me? You know what I mean? Like, how about Captain America, go have some kids, and then maybe you wouldn't ask me to do this. You know what I mean?" But I don't know. I kind of felt like you guys are being very, very unreasonable by asking him to do something that might make him lose his daughter after life is good for him. And like, I totally understood why he was like, "Sorry, not gonna happen. You guys can stay for lunch if you want, but you're not gonna talk to me about this stuff." And then he ends up talking to his wife um, after he figures out this whole time travel thing, and he's like, "Look, I figured it out." And she's just like, "You have to do it, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, pretty much. I know I have to do this." And so then they get the Hulk, which I really, really want to know your opinion, Bryce, about Professor Hulk and what you thought about him, because my opinion about it was very negative. I don't like it one bit because I don't like how much of Mark Ruffalo he looked like, and I don't like that he is like a very pale green, and I don't like that he seems remarkably smaller than he normally is, and he doesn't have his like puny god voice. It's more like it's just regular Ruffalo voice, and I don't care for it. What did you think? Did you like it or not like it or not care, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think they should have waited. They should have told that story before just surprising you with it. Um, it kind of makes sense that that's where they're going with it, since in Infinity War, it was he was struggling with the Hulk was struggling with being defeated and didn't want to come out again, and Banner was struggling without the Hulk, and so now that they've come to amends or whatever towards the storyline, it makes sense, but it's not as satisfying, and it makes the character a little less interesting to not have the danger of turning into the Hulk there, or you know having the Hulk there as an uncontrollable force is a little more interesting in battle than um, really really strong Mark Ruffalo. So yeah, I'd agree with you.
I feel like you obviously you remember 2012 when the first Avengers came out, and there's the moment when all of the Avengers are like ready to fight all the aliens from the sky, and all of a sudden Mark Ruffalo comes up on his little scooter and he's like beep beep beep, and they're like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Well, I guys need some help," and then he's like, "Here's this," or she's like, I thought you had to be angry or something. And he's like, here's the trick. I'm always angry. Remember? And then he like turns into the Hulk and he just smashes that thing down into the ground.
Yeah, that's one of the best moments of that movie.
Yeah, and then he like hulks out, and that's when he like jumps up and he's like jumping off the buildings and just like smashing everything. And they even do a callback to that in this movie, but he's smashing everything, and everybody was like, "Did you see the Hulk? Oh my god!" He was so tight. And then I can remember now talking about this. One of my biggest problems I had with Infinity War was, can you hear that?
Sorry, you cut out for a second.
Oh no, I stopped talking. Could you hear that motorcycle?
No, I couldn't.
Oh, good. Then my mic is pretty good. Yeah, giant, huge motorcycle just drove by, and I was like, great.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, I love it. But in Infinity War, the fact that there is zero Hulk besides the beginning really bothered me. I don't like Mark Ruffalo. The only reason I put up with him is because of the Hulk, and I like to see the Hulk. Dude, when he's like in his Hulkbuster outfit in Infinity War, and he's like, "Oh, you guys are so screwed now," and it's just like, shut up, dude. Like, your acting sucks right now. You're not doing good. I don't want to see you. I want to see green you. And so the fact that he wasn't in it, I was just like, this is bullcrap, dude. And the fact that they showed him in the running scene in the trailer, and that was one of those like fake outs, Do you remember what I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
Okay, so in the trailer for Infinity War, they have that last scene in the trailer where they're all running in slow motion at Thanos' army. And it's like Cap in the front and he's running, and Denai Guerrera, she's running. And then they have Hulk in the background and they're like all sprinting. And Iron Man's like, or not Iron Man, but uh the other one, Don Cheadle's guy, he's like flying with them. You don't remember that?
Um, I don't. I mean, I don't think I watched many of the trailers for this
Oh.
going up into it. Um, but yeah, I'll take your word for it.
Well, that part wasn't in the movie. And so I was waiting for that part the whole freaking time when I was watching Infinity War. I was like, "Oh, where's that moment they're gonna charge?" And the Hulk's there, but the reason they put that in the trailer is to psych you out because Hulk never comes in that movie. And so they like purposely tried to do that. And it really bothered me, and I was like, "Okay, well, I don't wanna see Mark Ruffalo." So then, uh, it just really bothered me that he's like this Professor Hulk now who's just like, "Yeah, I've learned to deal with it instead of, try to get rid of it. It's part of me. And I like people like me now." And he's like, "Dab," and it was like, "Oh god, like this is hecka stupid." And then he he seemed smaller. Did he seem smaller in size to you?
Yeah, maybe a little.
Like there were moments when at the very end when he's running with everybody and he's as tall as M'Baku from Black Panther. He's like an inch or two taller than him. And I'm like, dude, the Hulk is not an inch or two taller than a 6'5" guy. You know what I'm saying? Like he's a huge Hulk. And I don't know. I just sometimes the Hulk just lets me down. But anyways, let's get back to when what's her fit? Where is it at? Well, let's talk about when they see Thor and he's playing that new video game with everybody. What's that game called? Do you remember?
Fortnite.
Fortnite. I wanted to say Fallout. Yeah, Fortnite. And he's playing that, and he's with the two guys from Ragnarok, and they're like hanging out, and he's got that big old belly now, and he's he's all fat, drinking beer and stuff. Like, I don't know about you, but I and my theater were freaking cracking up. Like, it was just such an unexpected sight to see. What did you think about out of shape Thor?
Yeah, that was that was great. That's one of the better payoffs of the movie and not getting spoiled. I appreciate that they didn't show Thor in any in that state in any of the previews, because yeah, it was really shocking. Because I mean, Chris Hemsworth is so shockingly good looking that that's pretty much anyone talks about him on talk shows or I don't know. That's what my wife talks about, anyways. And so to take that away from Chris Hemsworth and say, now perform as a schlubby, beer bellied Thor is just such a great concept. It's so bold that I'm amazed that Disney let them do it.
Oh, I know. And not only that, but I mentioned to somebody when I was talking about this movie, I said I loved the fact that he didn't do some sort of like godly, lightning came and overtook his body to where you couldn't see him. And excuse me. And then when the lightning, evaporated, he was like in shape again or something, like some weird, now I'm in shape. Like I liked that even when it came down to crunch time at the end and he's in his uniform, he's still like overweight. And he fights overweight, and I was like, that's so cool, like that they did that. It just he had a really good arc in this movie, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about it later. But yeah, it was very so very much something I did not expect to see, and I know that it was definitely funny in my theater. Everybody liked that. um so then they talk to Thor. He's just drunk all the time. They kind of convince him, like, hey, we're going to need your help. We're going to go back in time and do all this stuff. And eventually they get him to work with them too. Natasha heads over to Tokyo. That's where she finds Hawkeye, who's not Hawkeye anymore. He's Ronin now. And he's just like a vigilante who's like, I lost my entire family. Half the world, which is a quarter good people, they are all gone. And why are there still bad guys? So I'm going to fight the bad guys. And he's killing them. Remind me a lot of Deadpool 2 when he's fighting all the bad Yakuza or whatever. And I'll be honest, dude, like I don't know if this scene, this this moment where Hawkeye is fighting all these guys is supposed to be really cool, but I was kind of bored watching it. What did you think about that whole fight scene? Did you think it was awesome or what?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't too impactful to me. It was just all right. They want to make him a vigilante now. He's pissed off, um, but yeah, I didn't really care.
And then the moment when he's like, don't run to that one guy, and the guy like turns around, and it's that dude he's in The Last Samurai, Rush Hour 3. You know what I mean? That Asian guy who's like really good with swords. He's in like every movie as like the Asian guy who is good with swords.
Yeah,
Yeah. When I saw him, I kind of rolled my eyes. Like I knew I was gonna be in for a cool sword fighting scene for a second, but I was like, dude, this guy's in everything. Like this is I instantly just saw Hollywood right here and was like, yep. They instantly were like, get that guy because he knows what he's doing, and he's like, your typical Asian guy. And it was like, nah, dude, I don't know. I didn't like that part. And then Natasha comes up and she's just like, hey, and he's like, hey, and then eventually he comes back with her too, and they all come together. They practice doing time travel. I thought that part was like kind of, dude. I'm gonna come off sounding like I really didn't like this movie, and I did, but I think you're going to understand at the end of this podcast why I'm being so harsh, right? Like during this, questioning a lot of stuff. There's a reason for it. Excuse me, let me get some water. All right. So let's continue on. So they're all together and they're talking about time travel and how it works and other movies that have referenced time travel and how they do it, and if that works, if that doesn't work, going back and messing with this changes the future, but then your future is your new past, so it doesn't really change anything, blah, blah, blah. Kind of hard to follow. And then Ant-Man goes into the past and then comes back, and he's an old guy, and then he's a baby, and then he's him again. And so not everything's completely perfect yet with time travel. Honestly, like I got a few laughs. Like I thought that was kind of funny when he's like, someone peed in my pants, and it might have been the baby, or when I was old, or me. Like, that stuff is funny. But I think at this point, I'm kind of like not looking at my watch because I'm bored, but looking at my watch like, okay, like how far are we in this movie? Like this movie's taking a long freaking time to get anywhere. Like, what did you think about the pacing up to this point?
yeah, it was getting a little a little long at that point, just because still trying to figure out like what are they going to do even if they time travel back and get the Infinity Stones. Where's the conflict going to come from? Um, other than maybe bumbling it up a little. Uh, but but yeah, I mean, I kind of rolled my eyes about the time travel plot. I mean, I guess I was expecting it with the time stone, but it kind of felt a little cheap, especially when they kind of have the fourth wall moment of talking about Back to the Future uh, in the movie. Um, so yeah, I think they had to do it. I mean, and I think the rest of the movie earns it. But in the moment when they're exploring time travel, it's I rolled my eyes a little. Hey, I'm gonna go feed my cat so it stops meowing. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'll just kind of talk a little bit while I'm here. I'll talk to people in the chat. 4 of you watching right now. What's going on in the chat right now? We're just just doing our thing, having a good old time. Bryce is gonna go feed his cat right now. I'm just chilling. So how many of you? Okay, everyone in the chat, what would you rate this movie? I want to see out of 10. What would you rate this movie? I wish there was a way to tell me who was watching right now. Brief intermission.
Sorry, I'm back.
Okay, welcome back.
Sorry, she was driving me insane. She kept meowing. I kept muting myself so you wouldn't hear. I don't know if you could hear or not, but
I didn't hear anything.
it's driving me crazy.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to record new stories for a new video last night, and yes, dude, a train, a car, a dog, a exhaust. I'm like, oh my god! Like, can the world please try and be quiet, please, right now? Like, don't they understand that I need quiet? Come on.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, okay, so we're at the point where they're talking about time traveling and going back, and they're testing it out, and it's not perfect yet, but then Clint comes and they're like, okay, we have these like time travel suits, blah blah blah. We need somebody to test out going back, and then we're gonna bring you back. And Clint's like, I'll do it. I don't care. I don't have anything to live for. So if I die, who cares? And he goes back in time. He's at his house, and he can hear his kids and stuff. And like, dude, that moment to me was like just his acting. Jeremy Renner's acting was like, it was really touching because he like picks up his kid's glove and he's just like, I don't know, man. I just started thinking about my kids and stuff, and like if they were gone and I got a moment to see them again, and then he goes to go see them and they bring him back from time traveling. And I don't know, that moment just like hit me though. I'll be honest. Like it hit me like, oh man, like I just want him to be able to see his kids and his wife like one more time, you know? And it doesn't look like it's gonna get to happen for him. Like, what did you think about that time when he went back in time?
Yeah, it worked really well because it reminds you what was lost and how much could be gained from bringing back half of the universe. But also it was a very smart way to demonstrate that you could bring back the Infinity Gauntlet because he brings back the glove when he comes back from the past.
Yeah. Was that the point? Was that a test for him to go back and bring something back from the past? Is that what that was for?
I don't I don't know if they said that before, but I think it was just a good way to demonstrate to the audience that's what they were going for. Because
Because
yeah,
if I remember correctly, when he came back and he was holding that glove, he was like, "It worked" or something, and he like
right,
held the glove up.
yeah,
And so I was thinking, like, did I miss something? Like, or did he go back in time to see if he could do that in case he can get the gauntlet? Like, I don't remember, but um, that also leads me to several questions that I'm gonna have for you coming up soon. Because I am a little head scratched about a few moments in this movie that I need some clarification in that maybe you could help me out with because I don't know. And I haven't heard one podcast bring it up. So I seriously have no idea about this moment, but I'll tell you in a minute. But okay, so they know that it works and they only have a little bit of what's it called? The PIM particles. and that's pretty much like the juice that gets you there and back. Everyone has enough time for one round trip, so make it count. Their plan is that they're going to go back into time at different moments in time where all the stones are, and they're going to retrieve the stones eventually so that they can come back and do the snap and get everybody back. The first place they travel to is New York City back in 2012. It's Banner's Roger, Lane, and Stark. Banner visits the Sanctum Sanctorium and convinces the Ancient One to give him the Time Stone, promising to later return the stones to their original place. Roger successfully retrieves the Mind Stone, but Lane and Stark fail to receive the Space Stone after Loki escapes with it, along with the Tesseract. Rogers and Stark travel to SHIELD headquarters in the 70s to steal an earlier version of the Space Stone, as well as extra vials of the Pym particles that Hank Pym then return to steal it from Hank Pym and then return back to the present. Rocket and Thor go to Asgard back in 2013 to take place in Thor #2, which is the lamest one, so I don't know why they would do that, to retrieve the Reality Stone from Jane, played by Natalie Portman. And Thor obtains his former hammer, Mjolnir or whatever, on Morag in 2014. Nebula and Rhodes steal the Power Stone before Peter Quill can. Rhodes returns to the present with the Power Stone, while Nebula is unable to return due to her cybernetic implants interfacing with those of her 2014 self. Let's talk about the whole moment of getting the stones. Did you think it was cool, stupid, corny, awesome, hilarious, sad? What were your emotions when they go to 2012 and you see that famous scene from the first Avengers movie where the camera's panning around all of them in the circle? Did you just get like nostalgia chills, or were you like, come on, like this is a 3-hour movie and you're going to waste time showing me stuff I've seen before, or what did you think?
Um, I liked it. I think it was. I mean, I think overall this movie was not as good as Infinity War, but it was more of a function. The function of this movie was more to cap off not just the Infinity War storyline, but the entire Marvel cinematic universe up to this point. And so going back in time and visiting all these separate movies where um they mention the Infinity Stones or somehow they used them, was really impressive. And I was sitting there while I was watching it thinking, what other franchise in the history of franchises has this many movies to pick footage from or to like quote moments from, and it's unprecedented. And I I turned to my wife after the movie and I said they should have called it Avengers the Marvel Clip Show because it was basically showing the greatest hits and reminding for people like me that have watched all these movies. um I can't remember the last time I thought of Thor 2 or um the old Captain America stuff back in the the 50s, I guess in the 70s. And yeah, I mean it's I think it worked really well to bring it all full circle, and it was an interesting way um to solve the problem of the destroyed Infinity Stones. Because what everyone was expecting was, okay, they're gonna attack Thanos again. They're gonna take the gauntlet. They're gonna do it right this time. They're not gonna have Chris Pratt screwing it up, and they're gonna get it. And then they're gonna use the stones to stop it from happening in the first place. And that's the bait and switch because they're destroyed. And so, how are you going to do it? And I think it was a really good solution. And all the scenes that they quoted and the stuff you recognize was it made it fun. It made the time travel worth it to me.
Okay, I agree. I just didn't want to say that yet, and, change your opinion. I thought it was cool. I really liked it. Like, dude, honestly, my favorite part of seeing that was seeing Scarlett Johansson with the red hair and that costume that she had in the first one. Oh my god, she's so hot. And I was just like, dude, I miss her. You know what I mean? Like, I miss her, that red haired Black Widow from the first movie. Like, honestly, she got kind of lamer as the movies went on. I thought she was so cool in that first Avengers movie, and I thought it was really funny to see the Professor Hulk looking back on his old self, and the old Hulk just like smashing everything, just screaming, and he's like embarrassed. He's like, "Oh God!" Like, back when I didn't have control, just reminded me of like when you see stuff or videos of yourself like 10, 15 years ago, and you're like, "Oh my God, look what I was wearing," or like what how I used to have my hair or something like that. You get embarrassed. Like I thought that part was hilarious, the way that he was like, getting embarrassed from the way he acted. Um, and my audience was cracking up too. And then then I started getting a little bit confused at certain things, because the scene where Cap is in the elevator with those other guys, that was the scene from Captain America 2, right? Winter Soldier.
Sorry, say again, which scene?
Captain America is in the elevator with those other guys that are supposed to be Shield agents, but they're actually Hydra agents.
Yeah, that was confusing to me too, because I think
That
it
didn't happen at the same time.
I don't think it happened at the same time, but I think it was all the same people, and it was quoting that image. Um, but I'm not quite sure, because because that scene in the continuity, it's right after Avengers, right after they defeat Loki, right? And Captain America, Civil War happened sometime after that. So I mean, it basically quotes that scene, but it's not the same scene as in Captain America. Oh, sorry, Winter Soldier. Yeah, it was Winter Soldier. It's not actually the scene from Winter Soldier, but it looks exactly like it.
Okay, I was the moment when that one guy like unclipped his gun and started to pull it up, and like right before Cap was like, "Hail Hydra!" Like I was like, "Isn't that what happened in Winter Soldier? Like the same exact thing, but instead of him walking out with the briefcase, he just like fights them off in the elevator." I don't know. I was just a little confused about continuity, but that didn't really bother me. I thought that was cool. Like I like that Cap said that. Like he's so Mr. America. Like you would never think that he would say something like "Hail Hydra," but he did. For the bigger cause. And I don't know. I just thought that was really powerful and cool the way that he handled that situation. I thought it was really, really awesome to see. I guess added on scenes from the 2012 movie that didn't exist. Like when or maybe it did and I forget, so excuse me if I'm wrong, but like that part where Hulk is trying to get on the elevator and he's too big, and they're like, "You have to take the stairs, bud," and he's like, "Oh, I hate stairs." Like, was that in that movie?
No, that was new.
Yeah. Okay, that was new, and they made that stuff look like it literally was like a deleted scene from that movie. Just the way that they computer animated it, or whatever they did, dude. I don't know, but they made that stuff look so good, and the different angles. Oof, I just was loving the callbacks to that. One callback I didn't like was the Thor one, because I never even saw Thor 2. I watched like a quarter of it and thought it was dumb, so I turned it off. So I didn't really know the storyline there, and I don't know. I thought it was like okay, but I think they could have gone without showing too much of that part, in my opinion. But it was interesting and it was important, I guess, because that's the moment that Thor gets his confidence back by talking to his mom, and that's when he gets Mjolnir or whatever, his hammer back, which I thought was really cool, which is also important for the future of this movie. Um, I really liked when they go Nebula and what's in War Machine. They go to get the Power Stone, and you see Star Lord Peter Quill standing right there, and he's like dancing, singing the songs. Like I thought that was awesome, and hilarious when it's like their view, and so they don't hear the music; they're just watching him like dance and like spin around in the streets. Like I thought that was hilarious, and then let's see, do we have any other ones? Yeah, we have one more, but I'm not talking about that yet. So what did you think about those other throwbacks to the other movies?
Yeah, I think they're all good. I agree. I mean, even though I saw the movies, I think the Thor 2 was the least recognizable out of all those. I don't remember the circumstances of his mother being killed, and so it had a little bit less emotional weight for me. Um, but it was fun seeing Thor run around in Asgard as Fat Thor. So that was interesting. But yeah, out of the callbacks, the Thor ones I couldn't really place in the continuity of all the other films. The rest of them were really recognizable. It was like the tentpole ones, like Avengers or um, Guardians of the Galaxy. There were really iconic scenes, and the part with Thor was just meh.
Right. Okay, so excuse me, man. I think it's allergies. Okay, those lead me to this one. Uh, Natasha and Black Widow and Hawkeye go to Vormir in the same year and learn from the Soul Stone Keeper, the Red Skull, that it can only be acquired by sacrificing someone that they love. All right, dude. Did you see the trailers for this movie, Endgame?
Yes, I saw some of there are so many trailers that came out. They flooded the market with trailers of just little bits of more to give you, and it's impressive how many they released and showed almost nothing.
Yeah, I really appreciated that, unlike the new Pet Cemetery. But do you remember in the trailer there's the little scene of Natasha, Black Widow, and she's shooting her handgun to a target, and she's like walking up to it as she's shooting hecka fast, and then she like keeps her eyes on the target and unloads the clip and puts a new one in and keeps shooting. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
She's like pop 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 like, and it just shows her like walking up to it, and you're like, oh snap, she's like preparing. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
was never in the movie, was it?
Nope, it was not. Because when they get to the scene where Hawkeye and her are talking about sacrificing each other or one of themselves, that's what got me was because I was like, okay, I know it's going to be Hawkeye because we haven't seen that scene yet where she's shooting the gun. And so if she dies right here, then that scene wouldn't exist. So of course Hawkeye's gonna die right now. And so that's why she like goes to run off the cliff. He pretty much like throat slams her down to the ground and he's like, I'm sorry, but no. And then he jumps off and I was like, yep, here it is. And then she shoots him or grabs him and then shoots up the cable thing. And then she's hanging there. And I'm like, oh dang. Well, he's just gonna throw her up. You know, he's gonna do some sort of like throw her up onto the top of the thing and then just like kill himself because of that shooting scene. But then she dies, and I was like, I don't know what to think at this point because I got the same feeling right here that I did with Infinity War, that scene that you said you don't remember, but it showed in the trailer. Hulk is running and charging, but that was never in the movie, and that was meant to throw us off. So that shooting scene with Natasha in the trailer was meant to throw us off too, apparently, because she is the one who died. So for me, I didn't know what to think. I was like, wait a minute, is she actually dead or is she going to come back? And honestly, I didn't have the same type of emotional opinion and feeling that I had about Natasha dying, laying there with the pool of blood around her head, as I did with Gamora in the last movie. Which woman did you feel sadder about?
Um, yeah, I think the scene with Gamora worked a little better. Um, but yeah, I mean it was sad either way. It was it brought some punch, and it felt like the stakes were really high for what was gonna happen afterwards.
Do you feel like I feel like Gamora was sadder? Do you feel like that was sadder because at that point, Thanos is dragging her and she's like, "No, no, no." And he's crying, like you can see the tears in his eyes as he's doing it, and then he like throws her off the cliff and he gets the stone, but you can tell he's like devastated about what he just did. Like, do you feel like there was a lot more emotional punch with
Yeah, I mean,
Gamora?
yeah, there's a lot more going on there because up to that point, you assume that Thanos doesn't have a heart and doesn't care about anything, and then it's revealed that he does, and that he actually really loves Gamora, and he has to sacrifice the one thing that he feels good emotions about. And so it's not only really sad because it kills Gamora, but it's it makes it feel hopeless because now there's truly nothing redeeming about Thanos, and he's given up everything. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot more going on than just like, there in Endgame. It was more of just a math problem of, well, one of us has to go, and we both want it to be ourselves, and it's just the tension of which one is going to do it. So I think there was more going on, in the emotional aspects of it worked better in Infinity War, but it was necessary in this one, and it just showed that there wasn't any getting around it. There was no trick that they could get around that requirement to get the Soul Stone, which I think was an honest way of doing it.
Yeah, I was thinking there has to be some sort of trick. They're gonna do something where they sacrifice each other for the love of each other. You know what I mean? Like at the same time, they both jump off together because the one can't let the other one die, and because of that, they'll retrieve the Soul Stone because they both sacrificed, but they also get to both live or something. You know what I mean? Like I thought something like huge like that would happen, and then when she died, I was just like, whoa, she's dead. Like what? You know what I mean? Like, okay, I guess she's dead now. I don't know. I didn't feel any emotions behind it, especially because I heard that she's gonna have a Black Widow solo movie finally, and so I'm like, well, if that's the case, then she's not really dead, or you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know because I can tell you that when Black Panther and Spider Man disappeared in the last movie, I was like, yeah, but they're gonna come back because they have sequels coming out, you know?
Well, yeah, and those movies made so much money that Marvel's not gonna just let them die.
Of course not. So that's kind of how I was thinking about Black Widow. I was like, is she really dead? But okay, maybe she is really dead at this point. But are they just going to bring her back somehow? You know. So I guess I was still trying to problem solve her situation instead of being like impacted with her death. You know, because I don't know. I didn't hear anything about her contract being up or anything. But anyways, the last time travel thing I want to talk about is Hulk going to go see that bald lady. I never saw Doctor Strange. I've seen the trailers, and that's the only reason I recognize who she was. But I don't know who she is. But a part that bothered me right off the bat was where he shows up and he's like, "I'm gonna need that stone," and she's like, she says something, and he goes, "I'm not asking." Like, oh, I'm a big tough guy. Like, okay, so how is that going to help you? You're just coming up and threatening this person who doesn't know you. Just, you know what I mean? You're just gonna come up and be like, "Hey, give me that. I'm not asking." Like, you immediately look like a bad guy. Like, how is that gonna help? You should come up and be like, "Hey, I'm Doctor Blah blah blah. Like, I know Doctor Strange. I fought against this guy with him. Like, we need that." You know what I mean? Like, I thought his approach wasn't appropriate to that lady. What did you think about that? Where he's like, "I'm not asking."
Yeah, that's a common problem when you want two good guys to fight each other. There's always some really, really stupid misunderstanding that could be easily alleviated by just a little bit of communication. Um, but I mean, it's fun. It's fun to see the Hulk get his ass handed to him by Tilda Swinton. Um, but yeah, if I were the Hulk, I would not have acted so impulsively.
Right. Especially with you being as big and buff and intimidating as you are, I wouldn't be like, "You better give that to me." Like, you sound like Thanos. You know what I mean? Like, chill, dude. um, but I did like when she brings that yellow like whip thing across the sky, which is technically like the timeline of life. And she's like explaining, you have all these stones and you lift one up and it throws off like the course of time. And only until you replace it, basically, will it be aligned again. So if I give you the stone, you're going to throw off everything. And I like, though, that moment when he's like, yeah, but I don't remember the quote that he says, but he says something about how Doctor Strange gave Tony or gave Thanos the stone. And she's like, "What? He would never do that." And he's like, "Yeah, he did." And she's like, "Well, then I'm just gonna give you the stone." And I was like, "That was easy." But then she goes, because if he gave it to Thanos, that must mean that, like, you really do need my help, pretty much. You really do need the stone. And so I'm gonna trust you, like, on faith that you're gonna do the right thing with it, because he would never give up the stone unless he needed to, you know? And I really liked that moment because it just reminded me of Infinity War when he gives Thanos that stone and he's like, "Spare Tony's life and you can have the stone." And they're like, "No, don't do it." And he's just like, "There's only one way out of these like 14 million thousand plans or whatever that's gonna work. And me giving him the stone is the plan." You know, it's like the step to the end game. And I don't know. I just like it just gave me flashbacks of that moment of Infinity War, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. What did you think about that whole thing?
Yeah, I think it worked. Especially with time travel, it's good to explain it several different ways and to demonstrate it physically for the audience. Um, but yeah, I mean, I really like that whole scene.
Yeah, I thought it was cool, and it was really awesome, like you said, to see Hulk just take a step, and then she just, like, slaps him in the chest, and he's like, "Oh!" Like, yeah, take him down, awesome. Cool, I hate Ruffalo, even though immediately after that, I just have to look at Ruffalo for 5 minutes. Um, okay, so then, Nebula let's get back into this. Where are we at? Uh Rhodes' War Machine returns to the present with the Power Stone, while Nebula is unable to return due to her cybernetic implants interfacing with those of her 2014 self, aka Bad Nebula. Um, through this connection, the Thanos of that time learns that his future success of the Avengers and the Avengers attempts to undo it. Thanos captures present day Nebula and sends 2014 Nebula to the present. Um, and okay, I need to know your feelings about Nebula. Do you like that character?
Um, yeah, she's alright. I mean, it was more she's more interesting playing across from Star-Lord. That's only the only parts that I'm really interested in her. Both um oh wait, I'm thinking of Gamora. Sorry, Nebula. Yeah, I could never really never really get into her. Um and yeah, and I don't think as far as like villains or anti-heroes go, um I never really cared about her that much.
I didn't either, and I don't like her line delivery. Like, I like her in spurts when she's, like, behind Gamora and stuff, and she says her little one-liners, you know? That's cool, but I think they gave her way too freaking much screen time in this movie, honestly. Like, I don't know why she has so much things to say. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Like, I don't like the way she, like, delivers all of her lines, and, like, then in the trailer, there was that one moment where she's, like, has, like, 2 daggers, and she's like, "Ah!" And then she, like, attacks somebody, but that's not even the Nebula that we like, that's the bad Nebula, and I was like, "So, Nebula really does 0 cool things in this movie besides shoot her bad villain self a little bit in the future of this movie." So, I don't know, I didn't care for her. um I just kinda would've cut some of her stuff out and maybe put in a different character a little bit more, I don't know. Just didn't really care too much for her. Let's see. Thanos sees, in her files that he gets his head cut off, and he's not mad that he gets his head cut off or anything. He's not like, "Oh my god, how could they kill me?" Like, what he's happy that he died because his whole thing was complete, you know what I mean? Everything he was going for finally happened. He finished what he was meant out to do. But what he is upset about, though, is that the Avengers are trying to go back in time and erase what he did. And his whole purpose of eliminating 50% of life was to have the other 50% that remains be grateful for what he did and start over and have more resources and live a better, healthier life. Um, and when he sees that they're trying to redo that and everybody's just so burnt up about the past, he's like, you know what? I don't like that. I'm gonna go to the future. I'm gonna collect all those stones after they get all the stones. I'm gonna snap my finger again, and I'm gonna delete all of history. Like, I'm not gonna keep anybody alive. You know, I'm gonna destroy everybody and start over from the people. And the people won't even know what happened as they grow up. They won't even know about the ungrateful swine of the people that are left, you know? Um, so that's his motive to get back into the movie. And at that point, I was like, oh, cool. You know what I mean? Like, okay, this is how we're gonna get Thanos back into the movie. I knew like he couldn't just be done with the movie in 5 minutes. Like it just doesn't seem right, you know? So I'm glad that they brought him back into the movie. What did you think about him finding out that the Avengers are trying to go back in time and change everything, and him seeing his head get cut off and him wanting to go back to the present day? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that was the part that makes Nebula worth it, is to bring that, the past Thanos back in Back to the Future. Um, yeah, I mean, that was a really clever twist that I appreciated, because again, it could be just a heist movie where they're going back to, um, back to these older movies and trying to get away with stealing stuff, and you know the plan, and then they tell the story. Either something goes wrong or everything goes right, and it's just not as interesting as if something goes very wrong, and Thanos is all of a sudden in the equation again. And yeah, I think overall, the overall plot, even though it feels a little hacky using, like a heist movie format with time travel, it it ends up pretty good with bringing Thanos back, and bringing the Infinity Stones into it in a different way than you'd expect.
I think I would have a way bigger problem with this movie if it wasn't 3 hours and they left all of the time travel stuff and then had like 20 minutes of fighting at the end. I would have been like, "Are you effing kidding me?" You know what I mean? I think 3 hours was a very appropriate time to have for this movie to put all that stuff in and not feel like cheated. Like they could have taken half that time travel stuff out and put in a better fight. Like I'm very pleased with the amount of action that we're getting at the end based on all of the boring, I guess you could say, I would say boring stuff that happened throughout the movie. All right, where are we at? After the Avengers retrieve and carry all of the Infinity Stones to the present, a new gauntlet is made, and Banner uses it to restore those whom Thanos disintegrated. 2014 Nebula uses the time machine to transport Thanos to the present, and he attacks the Avengers compound, planning to completely wipe out and then rebuild the universe with the stones. Okay, the moment that Hulk puts it on his hand, the gauntlet on his hand, and he's just like, you can see all the colors going up his arm and his neck and stuff, and you can tell he's in pain, but he's like, I got it, I got this, I'll be okay, I'll be okay. And then he does the snap, and it just like heck it burns him up. I was just like, dang, that's crazy. But then that moment where Hawkeye's wife calls him, dude, like I don't know what kind of feelings you felt at that point, but I just had this like, I knew they were gonna bring him back. There's no way they can't, but knowing that they did it just made me feel like such a breath of fresh air and it's such like a weight off of my shoulders. Like that's what like I felt like I could breathe again. Like oh my god, like yes, they did it. Like what do you think about that moment?
Yeah, I mean, it felt very satisfying, and I mean, you fully expected the movie to be over at that point. Like, all right, we did it, guys. Let's pack up and go home. Even though you know that Thanos is probably coming back too, but um, yeah, it was very satisfying to see that happen, and they made you wait for it.
Yeah, they really they really made you wait for it. And then I would say put like a slice in the plot right now, and this is your final act right here. Iron Man is standing out, looking, gazing outside the window, sees a bunch of birds, which I feel like those birds that were flying around chirping were representing life, life again. Um, I don't know if it was just a coincidence that birds were just outside or if that was like birds that came back that were gone. Um, but just within a split second, just boom, Paul Rudd, Iron Man, Scott Lane takes way too much stuff to the face that should have killed him instantly. But Thanos' ship just starts blowing up the Avengers compound, and I don't mean like shooting half of it down. Like they demolished the building with everybody inside, and uh, who is it? Rocket, Hulk, and what's his name? Don Cheadle, War Machine. They're all underground, like trapped under stuff. Hawkeye is underground with the gauntlet that has all the stones inside of it, and Ant-Man is just like wiped out, but he is like running his way through the building, and you see what's his face, Thanos come out of his ship, and he's like standing there, and you know it's about to go down, and I think at that point is when Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America take on Thanos, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, let's see. All right, so where are we at? Present day Nebula convinces the 2014 version of her sister Gamora to turn against Thanos and kills the 2014 version of herself. A restored Steven I don't want to get to that part yet. Wiki kind of skips ahead a little bit. I don't want to get to that part yet. Okay, so then you have the three like main Avengers, the callback to the first Avengers, where those are the three that were fighting in the forest, if you remember, back before they really even knew who each other were. And they're up against Thanos, and it's a good fight, dude. I just, I sat up in my seat like, okay, 2 hours went by, hour left. Let's do this. Let's start putting some action in this movie because up until then, I think the most action that we got in the movie, like the real most action, was Hawkeye fighting the bad Asian guys in Tokyo. And then you have the scene, obviously, where Cap fights Cap, which I thought was hilarious, talking about how he has a nice butt and everything. That was funny. I love the scene when Captain America gets up and he's like, "I could do this all day." And he goes, "Ah, yeah, I know, I know, I know." He's like, "I know, that's what you say." It's that's kind of his cringy moment, you know. And I love that. That was pretty cool. How did Captain America get his old costume to go back into time?
Yeah, that's a good question. did he have, well, yeah, did they have their costumes on when they went back in time? Maybe Steve Rogers just swung by his apartment and picked up his spare.
Do you think he got it freshly cleaned from the dry cleaners like a week before, and he was like, "Thank God, didn't know I was gonna need this again."
Yeah.
Guess so. Yeah, 'cause I didn't realize that until he walks up to himself, and 2012 Cap is like, "I got eyes on Loki." He's like, "I'm not Loki," and then they start fighting. But then I was like, "Wait a minute, like, where did he get that uniform from?" Because like when they show up, it's not like they show up in what they were wearing in 2012 because the Hulk is wearing like his T-shirt that he has to rip off so that he blends in, and Iron Man is wearing just like regular clothes and stuff. So I don't know, dude. I don't know how that worked, but anyways, so they go up against Thanos, and this is like our first real awesome, amazing fight scene. And all three of them are just like kicking Thanos' butt, but he's holding his own. And it even gets to the point where Captain America is being so beat up by him that his shield is like breaking. Like Thanos is breaking his shield. Um, my continuity might be a little off right here because I don't remember, but he gets something very special. Is that before or after his shield breaks?
I think that's after.
Okay, because Thor comes back from the past and he's got Mjolnir or whatever. Let's just call it his hammer. He has his hammer and his axe, and so he's fighting Thor with both of them, which is really cool. I'm glad to see Thor for one last time at least with the Avengers with his hammer. That was really cool. Um, but he's fighting. Thanos is getting like the upper hand and throws or knocks out Thor's hammer, and it like flies away. And I got a total Force Awakens moment when it starts flying away and then it stops and then it like flies back. And I was like, oh, that totally reminds me of like when Rey gets the lightsaber, or when what's the name, Luke Skywalker gets it or whatever. Um, and I thought it was gonna be Thor that like it started flying away and then he held his hand out and it flies back to his hand, but it flies past everybody and into Captain America's hand. And I didn't go opening weekend or anything. I went on Tuesday, which was just 2 days ago. So, I went, like, in the afternoon time too, so it was like a halfway full theater, enough to where people were, like, clapping at moments and, like, laughing hard and making noises and stuff, and, but I definitely made the loudest noise in the theater when Captain America got the hammer. When it went into his hand, dude, I was kind of, like, sitting up, but I, like, jumped out of my seat and I went, "What?" And I went, "Oh my god, what? Are you serious?" And then, like, I looked at my wife like a freaking little 4-year-old who just saw a freaking Santa Claus, and I was just like, oh my god," and I just, like, sat up and started rocking in my chair, like, dude, I was, like, freaking out, and, like, the teenage girl sitting next to me was, like, cracking up, like, looking at me, but dude, I couldn't even control myself when he caught that, and I was like, "What?" Like, dude, what did you think about that moment?
Yeah. I did. I told my wife after the movie, I said that scene was designed to make Patton Oswalt come in his pants. Like it every nerd in the world watching that scene is gonna feel overwhelmed as I was. Yeah, I loved it. It's just an awesome payoff for for Captain America, and just seeing Captain America and Thor both beating back Thanos with Mjolnir and Stormbreaker was, yeah, that was a high point of the movie.
"Here, take this. You can have the little one." Um, dude, not only that, but he's not just, like, holding it, but he's, like, wielding lightning with it, you know what I mean? And he's, like, shooting lightning. Dude, I'm sorry, but, like, as amazing as that was, how is he able to do that, though? Like, for real. It's like, where did he get this? Because I remember call back to Age of Ultron or whatever, when they're at the party and everyone's trying, like, to use their strength, and Iron Man's trying to use his, like, gadgets and stuff to, like, lift Thor's hammer, and nobody can do it, but then Cap wiggles it. You remember? And Thor's like, "What?" You remember that moment?
Yeah, he barely wiggles it with using all of his strength, and so yeah, I mean, it's a little, creative, creative leeway there, but, I mean, it was such an awesome moment. It's worth it's worth, being a little, not consistent with the logic.
Yeah, I did not care though. Like, no moment was I like, "Come on, how can you do that?" Like, I was just like, "Oh my god, like, I need to change my pants right now." I just, you know what I mean? I just made an accident, and then they're fighting him, and I don't like honestly, dude. The last hour of this movie just like flew by so fast that I'm like getting a little foggy on what happened. But does Thor, like not Thor, I'm sorry, does Thanos get the better hand on all 3 of them? Does he beat them all down?
Yeah, I mean, he beats everyone back for a long time, and that's that's the part that's a little confusing is how strong is Thanos exactly without the Infinity Stones? Because he's still able to beat off, like, every superhero that comes to him at this point, and, so, I mean, he must be one of the strongest characters in the Marvel Universe even without the Infinity Stones.
Yeah, you gotta think. Yeah, because the first time we see him, he already has, like, at least 1 stone in the beginning of Infinity War when he's fighting Hulk. He already has 1, so that's how you know he's, like, already that strong because of 1. But I don't know how strong he is without any of them, but he's definitely holding his own, and I think it gets to the point honestly, no. No, 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 I think you and I are both wrong. I think Cap gets, the hammer before Thanos breaks his shield. Because I think the moment is he gets the hammer, he holds his shield up, and then he fights Thanos, and then I think Thanos is like hitting him and breaks the shield and Cap tightens it around his arm, and then he like stands up like he's about to go for him again. I think that's what happens. I might be wrong, but I think that's what happens. And then you hear on your left, and you're like, where did that come from? I mean, we all know, that it's gonna happen, but you just hear like, yo, on your left, and he's like, huh? And he doesn't notice that like there's one of those like fire twinkle portals coming up behind him, and dude, like I don't even know what to say to that without like I'm cheesing super hard right now. Like I'm smiling super hard because I'm just like it's kind of hard to talk like just remembering that scene,
Yeah,
how
yeah, it's awesome.
amazing it was.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy that they kind of accomplished what they were going for, and that they they have the Hulk snap the Infinity Gauntlet fingers to bring everyone back. They prove that it succeeded because they had Hawkeye's wife call him, and then immediately crash Thanos into the building and have all this chaos happening to where you kind of forget that, you know, the other half of the Avengers and the other half of all the superheroes that exist in the MCU are still alive again. And it's a great reveal when Doctor Strange opens up all the portals and all of the superheroes come through and start entering the battlefield. And yeah, that is the high point. I mean, the Mjolnir with Cap was a high point, but the high point is when just of the rest of the superheroes come through the portals.
Dude, oh my god. Like I got chills right now just like thinking about it. Um the first ones to come through, if I remember correctly, is Black Panther, right?
Yeah, I think so. And Doctor Strange, and Spider Man. I mean,
No, Spider-Man's not the first one.
they all come out at the same time, pretty much.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I just remember. No, I just know for sure that Black Panther and one or two other people come out first, and I think he comes out with Denai Guerrera and someone else or whatever. But when he comes out, dude, like Black Panther comes out, I was just like, you nailed it exactly, Bryce, like perfectly. Where you were like, we know that they're back, but I immediately forgot that they were back because of Ant-Man getting shot and the whole thing collapsing, and then the fight with Thanos. Like, dude, I completely forgot about that. And to have Black Panther walk in, I was like, oh my god, oh yeah, oh my god, oh my god, and then like more of them open, dude, and then like all of them come out and they're doing their poses, and dude, like they are pissed, bro. Like they are not like, what's going on, guys? You know what I mean? Like they come out and they're like, dude, we are going to f you up. Like you guys are done. And I forgot to mention before they all come back, Cap is standing up and he's staring at Thanos, and that's when Thanos' entire army comes out. And you got like those flying snake things from 2012. You got his whole army. You got like those crazy dog things, like, dude. And you were just like, how are they gonna do this? There's only like 8 of them. You know what I mean? Like at some point, half of them are still covered by the Avengers building. Like, how are they gonna do this? And then that's when all the Avengers, everybody comes back, dude. And holy crap, bro! Like if I can describe without you seeing me how I looked, it was a little something like me sitting completely straight up in my chair, my hands like, that evil thing that bad guys do where they put their fingers together and they go ha 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 ha, like, you know what I'm talking about? Like
Yeah.
that's what my hands look like.
Yeah.
Huh?
Steepling your fingers.
Exactly. And I was just like wiggling my hands back and forth because they were sweating, dude. And I was just like, oh my God. Oh my God. Like I was just like rocking back and forth. And I paid for D box seats. Like, you know what those are, right?
No, what are those?
The seats that move and vibrate to the movie.
Oh, really? I've never even heard of those.
Oh my God, dude. That's like standard now in theaters down here in Sacramento. Yeah, and you pay a little extra money and your movie like when you see Thanos's ship or whatever, like flying and turning sideways, like your chair like turns sideways and stuff with it. And then like when you hear like there's a moment when Hulk jumps out of the back of the truck when they're on Asgard or whatever, or not Asgard, but when they find Fat Thor, and Hulk jumps out of the truck, and like my seat goes boom, like when he hits the ground. Like, so it's like integrated to the movie. And so the moment, like when all the Avengers come and everything, dude, like my seat is just like starting to like rock and rumble a little bit and stuff. So it's really building it up. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, oh my God. And I'm looking at my wife and she's just like cheesing too. And we're just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then like Spider-Man comes out and my audience is like, yeah, yeah. And then like, you know what I mean? And just like everybody is just like feeling so good at this moment. And then Steve Rogers is like, Avengers assemble, dude. My D-box chair went and it's like shaking me, dude, like I'm having like I'm in an earthquake. And then like I remember the girl next to me, she had an icy and she took the lid off of it, but it was sitting on top of the thing. Dude, her icy was like hecka shaking around like there was an earthquake. And dude, me and her looking at each other and we're cracking up because of like how much our seats were rumbling and vibrating and like ripping us around. And I was just like, dude, oh my God, like this entire fight, bro, just like you got appropriate time to see your favorites. You got to have like that moment when Iron Man gets to see Spider-Man and he's like, hey, Mr. Stark, he's like, I wasn't feeling good. And then I'm starting to feel better. And you know what I mean? And he's being like cute little Tom Holland that he is. And then like Iron Man just like cries and like hugs him. And he's just like, oh, wow, this is nice, you know? And like, it's just that moment that you know how much Iron Man has just like missed Spider-Man because he feels guilty that he's the cause of all of it, you know? And it's just like everybody fighting. And then Star-Lord gets to see Gamora again. And he's just like, because he knows that she's dead. You know what I mean? So he gets to see her again. And it's just this epic moment. And you get to see Bucky and like everybody, dude. And even there was like this girl moment where you get to see Denai Guerrera, Shuri, and what's her face? Gwyneth Paltrow as a rescue. And like it's such a pleasing fight. And I don't know, dude. I don't know how to explain it, but the feeling that I got inside was like the most pure, satisfied ecstasy feeling I could ever have watching a movie. Like, does that ring any bells for you, or what did you think about that whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, there was definite moments throughout that entire battle that were just, I mean, not a lot can compare to it. It was it was a very cool sequence. I mean, and it lasted for so long. I know my wife's favorite part is when all the women superheroes assembled together and
Yeah.
to help Captain Marvel. And I turned to my wife to say something, and she shoved my face away because she was enjoying herself too much. And what I was going to say to her before she rudely shoved me away was like, I don't think Captain Marvel needs any help. She just flew, she just demonstrated that she's the most powerful superhero here, and then all of a sudden she needs a posse. But that's besides the point. I mean, there's just so many scenes and like vignettes throughout that battle that were just awesome, and that I don't think that you can have those moments without all of the build up to those moments.
Right, dude. And then um they get the gauntlet, or not his gauntlet, but the one Iron Man made, that has all the stones in it. He gets it, and they get it away from Thanos, and they're kind of playing hot potato with it, like passing it off, which I thought was awesome to see, like that moment where Spider-Man, like whatever his that guy's whoever he was from the Infinity War.
To continue, click Add to Chrome.
What the f? Did you hear that?
Yeah, that was weird. Sorry about that.
Oh, was that you?
Yeah.
Oh,
I was clicking on a link and it all of a sudden brought up some spammy thing.
okay. No, I thought that was me. I thought it was basically being like, uh, if you want to have more time doing your hangout, you know what I mean? And I was like, oh crap. But anyways, so I loved when the guy from Infinity War, the first bad guy, like the one who fought Tony Stark in the beginning of Infinity War, he kind of looked like Squidward. You know what I'm talking about? He
Yeah,
was like,
yeah. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
you're like, you're embarrassing me in front of my wizard friends or whatever. And that guy, he like started doing that thing where he was raising like the stones up the ground up so that he could get the gauntlet, and then Spider-Man comes swinging out of nowhere and like, I'll take that, and like runs away. And I love that. And then the moment where Thor's ship is going to just start blasting them. Oh my God, I forgot about this. This is like one of my favorite parts about this whole thing, dude. Scarlet Witch, bro, where she comes back and she is like, you took everything from me. He's like, I don't even know you. And she's like, oh my God, dude. When she's fighting him, bro, I was just like, oh my God, dude. First of all, that girl is so fine in real life. And watching her beat Thanos down, dude, was just like the satisfaction that I needed for her, because she had to kill Vision, and then he rewound time, and then she had to watch Thanos kill Vision. She had to watch him die 2 times in a row. Like, if anybody wanted revenge on Thanos, she was the one who wanted it. And the fact that they didn't just give her like a moment where she just like hit him once or twice and then it was done. They gave her like a moment where she was like, that was probably a good 2 or 3 minutes of her by herself beating down Thanos, bro, to the point where he was like, just shoot everything, shoot everybody. And they're like, sir. And he's like, I don't care, just do it, because he was like going to die because of her. She was so freaking powerful. I would love to see her go up against Captain Marvel, but that would be really cool. Like, her full power against Captain Marvel would be super tight.
Yeah.
But then Thanos' ship is about to do it, and then they stop, and then all the guns like point up to the sky, and they start shooting in the sky, and everybody's like, "What are they shooting at?" And I mean, I don't know about you, but I pretty much knew what it was. Captain Marvel. Like, were you surprised to see Captain Marvel? Were you like, oh, I forgot? Or were you like, oh, yeah? Like, the minute they were shooting at something in the sky, you knew what it was. Was that you or no?
Yeah, I mean, it was you're constantly questioning when she was coming back, because she just left at pretty much the beginning of the movie and doesn't come back until the very end,
Thank God.
and kind of saves the day, but not fully. Yeah, it was a good moment.
I will say that she definitely, like, is the person that prevented the snap to happen again. Because he gets his hands together, or his fingers together, and she pulls his hands apart, which I was like, oh, dude, I thought he was about to do it again. And I was like freaked out for a second. But dude, she like comes from space and just like slices through that ship, dude. Like, as awesome as it was, it just kind of like made me think again, like we talked about earlier, like, oh, so you can just fly through ships and you're fine. Like, what are you? You know what I mean? Like, you don't have any threats that can come to you. Like, just do your thing and then leave again, please. We don't need you. And so she comes in, she blows up Thanos' ship, and then I love the moment she hits the ground and and Peter Parker is like laying in a hole, and he's like cradling the thing, and he's like, "Hi, I'm Peter Parker." And she's like, "Hi, Peter Parker. Does that belong to me or something like that? Or you got something for me?" And like, that was the only moment that I liked Brie Larson as Captain Marvel. Just that line delivery where she's like, "Hi, Peter Parker." Like, you got something for me? Like, that's the only time I liked her. Like, did you like her introduction at the end, and then that moment with Spider-Man? Like, did you like that or what?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. That was the only moment I really liked Captain Marvel, in both her movies and her movie in this one. Yeah, the Captain Marvel in the beginning was just so meh. It was so nothing that it was just kind of cringeworthy to watch those scenes. Um, so I'm kind of glad that she wasn't super involved in the whole movie. Uh, but yeah, that the finale, her involvement in the finale was fun.
You know, as we're talking, what I think about that is kind of bothering me a little bit is the end of Captain Marvel's movie. She has the mid-credit scene where she shows up and she's like, "Where's Fury?" And then it ends, and you're like, "Oh snap!" You're about to see her again in Endgame, and then the next time you see her is when she saves Tony Stark, and then she comes back, and they're kind of talking about Thanos, and then she's not saying anything really. She just leaves, and then she's like, "I'm gonna go kill Thanos," and then I like the part where they kind of confront her, and they're like, "So where you been this whole time?" Because I know that that's an audience question. So where has she been through all of these attacks? And she's like, there's a lot of other planets besides your planet, and unfortunately, none of them have you guys. And they're like, that's fair. I was like, okay, that's fair. But I think one thing that bothered me is that I didn't get like enough of them being like, so who are you? And then she's like, I'm Carol, and I'm Carol Danvers. I'm from Earth, raised on a different planet. Always, you know what I mean, raised to believe I was this person. I fought this war against people that really weren't. Blah blah blah. That's when I met Nick Fury. That, you know what I mean. And then I got a page from him. That's why I'm here. So what happened? You know what I mean? Like, and then they don't have to explain what happened, but I wanted that moment where they got introduced to her, because I felt like there was a piece missing. I felt like they went from the end of her movie, Where's Fury, straight to like, you guys already know who I am, and I just say Tony Stark, and like, now let's go kill Thanos. Like, I feel like there was a piece in between that was them meeting her and her explaining who she was. Um, that I felt like I needed. Like, what do you agree or not?
I don't think it was necessary. Because she wasn't a super important part of this movie really until the end. And really, if you think about it, if you're a viewer of this movie and this is the first Marvel movie you see, can you imagine how long it would take to give all of the origin stories of every superhero that's on screen?
Yeah,
I kind of I'm glad that they didn't go through all of that and say like, oh yeah, I'm big and green because of gamma radiation, for every single superhero. So if that's the case with the rest of the cast, might as well not include her explaining who she is to them, because the important people to know is the ones that it's important to know is the audience, and they should already know anyway.
agreed. But I also kind of feel like, no, they don't need to go through. I'm Black Widow. I'm Captain America. I'm Hulk. I'm Thor. Like, I no, I don't. They all know each other. Like, they're not going to her planet. You know what I mean? And like, having to introduce themselves to her. She's coming to them. So I kind of feel like she needs to be like, I'm Carol Danvers. I'm Captain Marvel. This is where I'm from. What's going on? You know what I'm saying? At least something like that. Like, no, we don't need a whole origin story explained again after we just got Captain Marvel. But I kind of feel like for them, like, it just kind of seems like she just showed up and they're like, oh, you have powers? Welcome aboard. And it's just like, I don't know, dude. I felt like something was missing, but hey, that's just my opinion. Um, there's also one thing before we start wrapping this up that I wanted to talk about that I missed. It's the part where Steve Rogers and Tony Stark travel back to the 70s to go get the Pym particles and the Space Stone. There's two things that happen in there. One, Captain America sees, now I'm blanking on Peggy Carter, and she's got a picture of him on her desk, basically showing like she never moved on, kind of like she always thought about him and everything. And but he can't go talk to her really. He doesn't have time. He has the greater good that he has to go for, which is finding the stuff, the Pym particles, and then getting back to the future. Um, I thought that was really cool that they've always kind of kept with that story. That's not a storyline that was in the first Captain America and then never really talked about again. I like that it's kind of been threaded throughout all these movies to kind of keep you remembering. So that way, when you see her in this movie, you're just like, oh, I instantly know who that is and why it matters to Cap. Um, Also, the moment when Tony Stark sees Howard Stark, which is his dad, and they have that moment where he's like, "Do I know you?" He's like, "What's your name?" And he's like, "Howard Potts." And he's like, "Oh, that's my name." And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, the wife's pregnant." And he's like, "How far along is she?" He's like, "I don't know, this far, I guess. I don't know." But he's like, "Hey, like, I'm nervous about being a dad, you know." And he's just like, "You're gonna be a great dad, just like don't trip and just spend time with him." Like, he's just kind of giving him a little pep talk, um, which is awesome because like Tony's always had like these feelings about his dad, and the fact that he gets that moment to like hug him, say something meaningful to him. I just think it was just a really nice moment, especially knowing the outcome of Iron Man. Like, it was really nice to see him get that moment with his dad. Like, did you like those moments of the 70s?
Yeah, it was good. It didn't. I mean, I really like John Slattery, the character, or the actor that plays his dad. It wasn't as important to leave in the film as some of the other payoffs. I mean, I think there's only really mention of his regrets surrounding his father in like one of the other movies. Um, but it was more to illustrate how much how much Tony Stark cared about his daughter and his concerns with raising her because he is kind of a playboy. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, it worked. It was a good moment, and having him kind of weirdly hug his father, and his father, just for all he knows, is Tony Stark's a complete stranger, just all of a sudden being very, very comfortable with him. So that was kind of an interesting um, aspect to it.
Oh, I love that part where he's like, "Thank you, for everything you do for this country." This is really funny. Like, there wasn't as many jokes in this movie as um, there, like, obviously Thor Ragnarok, which I'm super thankful for. There definitely was the amount of comedy that you needed in a Marvel movie now, but I think with the heaviness of this movie, it definitely was appropriate. I think how much they put into this one. So let's get back to the fighting. Just getting close to wrapping this up. Um, Captain Marvel is fighting Thor, and she's kind of holding her own, kind of kicking his butt a little bit. But I think it honestly looked pretty even. And she's trying to rip that gauntlet off of his arm, and she's about to do it, and he kind of realizes like this chick is powerful, and he takes the power stone out, which I did not see coming. He takes it out and then just like pulls his arm back, gets that power punch pretty much, and then just like punches her and knocks her down to the ground and then puts the stone back in. And then you see Iron Man just fly up to him and like grab him by the hand, and he's trying to yank that gauntlet off, but he can't. And then Iron Man pretty much just gets like punched in the face and like gets punched off of him. And Thanos, he kind of has that moment where he holds up his hand to do the snap, and he has like his little bad guy phrase that he says real quick, which I don't know if you remember it. I don't remember it, but then he snaps his fingers, and I was like, oh my god, like he did it again or something, But then nothing happens, and he's just like, what? And he turns his hand around, and all the stones are gone. Um, Tony has all the stones, and he holds his hand up, ready to do the snap, and Thanos is like, I'm inevitable, or whatever he says. And Iron Man goes out saying, I'm Iron Man. Same thing he went out saying in the first Iron Man, the first movie to start off the MCU and the last movie to finish off the MCU for this wave. And it's just a super cool callback. It's awesome. He snaps his finger. Everybody disintegrates. Thanos obviously disintegrates last because he's the big bad guy. I didn't think at the moment, I was like, wait, is he not going to disappear? Because it kind of took a long time. But then he did. And I was like, thank God. And it completely just destroys Tony. He's burned up on his whole right side. He was just effed up, and he's sitting down, and dude, like, I think this is where I think everybody started turning on the waterworks a little bit. Spider-Man comes up to him, and I mean, dude, you can take it away from here. Like, how did you feel about this whole moment with Spider-Man and Pepper Potts?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really powerful moment, and it's a really good send off for Robert Downey Jr. Um, well earned. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. is basically the reason why the MCU exists. The fact that he was able to pull off Iron Man, a a C level superhero from the Marvel roster, and they're able to build it up to this point, and this is how they're gonna say goodbye to Tony, is really powerful. And then in the world of the movie itself, yeah, I mean, the relationship between Pepper and him pays off really well, and Pepper understands the sacrifice that Tony has to make, and tells him that it's okay that they're safe now, and it was really powerful. It was a really great moment and well earned.
Yeah. Did you cry? Don't lie.
Um, I probably teared up a little. Yeah, I teared up a little.
When Spider-Man was like saying stuff to him, and Robert Downey Jr. like wasn't even looking at him because he was so like dying, dude, I was just like, I was so sad. I'll put it that way. I was really, really sad. I wasn't crying yet, but I was just like, oh my God. Like I was starting to get a little misty. And then Pepper Potts, who I don't like, and I haven't met one person who does like her, but she comes up and she was like, we'll be okay. Like, we'll be okay. You can go now. We'll be fine without you. I was like, rude. You know what I mean? Like, just die now. We'll be all right. I was like, that's rude. But that's just what I thought to myself to try and prevent the tears, I think. But she gives him, then his heart goes out and his hand falls, and she kisses him on the cheek. And dude, that from that moment, I was started like getting really teary, and then from there, they're at his what is it, his funeral, pretty much like his send off. And the part that made me lose it, bro, was when they put proof that Tony Stark has a heart on that bouquet or whatever, and they like on the wreath, and they put it in the water and it starts going away. Dude, I was like crying, bro. Like straight crying. Like, and then my wife was like crying, and like everyone in my theater was crying, dude. Like, you didn't shed a tear.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I might have shed a tear. Yeah, I mean that's a really powerful moment too, just because it pans across basically every single superhero in the universe at the funeral.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, like I said, it's an awesome send off for the character.
Except for one hero that was not there. Gamora.
Well, and Vision and Black Widow.
Yeah, but yeah. No, I mean like someone wasn't there who was alive, and that was Gamora. The rest of the
Yeah,
Guardians were there, I think, right?
that's true. Yeah.
Where was she?
I mean, she must have had to go back to the past because that was past Gamora that was in this movie.
Well, how did she go back to the past?
The Pym particle. I mean,
Who went back to?
they had to send her back to the past because everything had to be put back in place. I mean, that's why Steve Rogers went back into the past to like take Mjolnir back to the past and all the Infinity Stones back. Yeah, so Gamora's back in her own timeline, I guess.
Okay, so they're making a Guardians of the Galaxy 3, right?
Yeah.
Is Gamora's in that, right?
Okay,
how?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if Gamora's in that. Is she?
I don't know, because I've been hearing a lot, dude. I mean, I hear so much, but I hear that nobody knows where she is, and that's what Peter Quill is looking for at the end of the movie. He's on a ship, and it says searching, and he's searching, and there's like a picture of her, and he's like searching for her. Like, I wonder if she just took off during the battle.
I don't know.
Because I mean, I kind of feel like they would have shown her going back in time, because they would have had to give her a Pym particle, give her a bracelet, give her a time travel suit. Like, none of that. And she doesn't even know who these people are. So I don't know, dude. That also leads me to my other question. Let's say hypothetically, she's not sent back to the past and she's still in the present. Why can't they bring Black Widow back?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
a soul for a soul. I know that. But Gamora was also a soul that got traded for the Time Stone that was destroyed. And and then they went back in time and brought past Gamora to the future. Why can't they go back to 2012 and bring Black Widow back to the future?
You're just thinking too hard. I mean, I couldn't understand like why they couldn't bring back like Loki either. Pretty much, I mean, they have infinite power with the Infinity Gauntlet, so why not just put everything right? Why not?
Well,
Why not
but
just make?
Loki is back.
Was he?
Loki's back. Remember when they try to get the stone? Yeah, they try to get the stone in the Tesseract, and there's the moment when Hulk is like hate stairs, and he like bunches open the door, and it hits Iron Man, and Iron Man like drops the suitcase, and Loki picks it up. Remember, and he's holding the Tesseract, and he like does that disappear trick, and he like disappears. And that's why they had to go back to the 70s to go get more pin particles and the stone from the past, because Loki grabbed that stone and like disappeared.
Oh, that's right. But wouldn't he still be in the past though?
I don't know, but I do know they're having like a Loki show or miniseries or something on the new Disney Plus coming out.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Oh my god, dude, they're having a new Captain America with what's his face, Anthony whatever, and Bucky and Falcon, and they're doing a bunch of stuff like that. And then okay, so I don't know. That's just a question I had that nobody can answer for me. Like, is Gamora still in the future? And if she is, why can't they go back and bring Black Panther? Because if they're saying like she can't be brought back, not Black Panther, Black Widow. If they're saying she can't be brought back because the soul for a soul will, how come Gamora can? Because she was also a soul. So I don't know. But let me drink some water. Getting a little coarse out here.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem with time travel movies and movies that have an object with unlimited power. There's always the question of, well, why don't they just set everything right? Why don't you just go back in time and kill baby Hitler? You know, why don't why don't you do all the things that everyone if they had the chance to time travel would do? And the answer is just, well, it doesn't lend itself to the story. If you set everything right, if you got Black Widow back, then there's nothing lost. There's no sense of losing anything, and that's not satisfying for a story. I mean, that's also kind of the reason why I roll my eyes at the new Star Wars movie that's coming out, that they're basically bringing back Emperor Palpatine. And it's like, okay, so Darth Vader died for nothing then? Nothing. there's no lasting impact of any stories now because you can just retcon it out.
Well, the lasting impact could be what's his name? Kylo Ren avenging his grandfather.
Yeah, that's true, but I don't know. I hope
I'm
they.
reaching. I don't know.
Well, yeah, we don't have to talk about my theories, but I hope they don't do the obvious thing with that. I hope they don't just say like, well, he never actually died, because that would be very, very unsatisfying.
And then it'd be like, where have you been for 70 years, pretty much? All right, so to get towards the very end of this, following Stark's funeral, Thor appoints Valkyrie as the king of New Asgard and joins the Guardians of the Galaxy, aka the Asgardians of the Galaxy. Quill begins searching for 2014 Gamora. So, as far as Wikipedia says, she's still alive or still in the future. Rogers returns the Infinity Stones to their original places in time, then chooses to remain in the past to marry Peggy, and then he comes back as Old Man Rogers and passes his shield to Sam, aka the Falcon. I really liked the Iron Man hologram that he has, that his daughter and his wife and everybody gets to see. I thought that was really cool. Thor tells that chick Valkyrie that she's the new king if she wants to be. So she's like, yeah, why not? And he's like, I'm just going to kick it with the Guardians of the Galaxy now. they're searching for Gamora. I guess that's probably what's going to be in number 3, Guardians of the Galaxy. And really funny and awesome chemistry between Peter Quill and Thor, where he's like, yeah, but I'm in charge. Thor's like, yeah, sure, you're in charge. And he's like, yeah, but I am. I know you are. Like that whole back and forth was funny. Really, really on the verge of going one more time too far, but they stopped at the perfect amount of bantering. Steve Rogers goes back in the past. I really like that they mentioned that he's going to go back for however long he wants to go back for, but for us, it's only going to be 5 seconds of reality. I really like that because it kind of put more perspective on the whole time travel thing that happened to like Ant-Man in the middle of the movie and all that stuff. Like it kind of made more sense. They kind of cleared that up for me personally. He returns all the Infinity Stones and all the Thor's hammer and whatnot. He gets that final dance with Peggy Carter that he wanted, that he never got back in the past. He comes back as an old Clint Eastwood, and he gives a shield to Sam, which is awesome. And I kind of knew that was going to happen because I've heard that like in the comics he passes on being Cap to the Falcon. Actually, I heard he passes it on to Bucky and Sam. I don't know, something like that. But I knew like when that moment came where Sam walks up to him, he's gonna make him the new Cap right there. So, what did you think of? First of all, what do you think of Thor joining the Guardians of the Galaxy?
I'm excited for it. I think it'll be awesome in the next movie. I mean, especially with Ragnarok setting the tone is a lot lighter with Thor. I think he'll fit in really well with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and I could watch a whole movie of Star-Lord trying to assert his dominance over Thor. Yeah, that'll be fun.
I know. I think if it works, which I'm pretty sure it will, I would love to see a lot more of those movies than any more Captain Marvel crap. I think Thor fits in perfectly with comedy, and Guardians is all about comedy. So I feel like those are two perfect mixtures right there. Um, what did you think about the effects that they put on Chris Evans to make him look old? Did you buy it? Or were you like, nah, that's like somebody in an old suit? Or were you like, dang, that looks pretty darn good?
Yeah, I thought it looked pretty good. Yeah, I think old makeup has gotten really good over time. Um, and I'm sure that some of that was digital too. I don't think they would have trusted makeup to all of that. I think it worked out really well. It'll be interesting. Maybe I know in the comics there's kind of a storyline where there's like an old Steve Rogers. Um, Maybe if they get Chris Evans to sign another contract for a couple movies, they can explore and Steve Rogers as an old man, which would be pretty
Ooh.
interesting. I mean, he's still a super soldier. Like he's probably, like over 100 by now, but you know, he could probably still kick some butt.
Yeah. As an old guy?
Heck yeah. He's Captain America, man.
That's true. Okay, maybe. We'll see. I doubt it. I don't think they're. I think that was kind of like the big thing. Like your contract's done. Let's just give you a good send off. Let's pass the torch. Um, Honestly, I'm not that excited to see Sam as Captain America. Like, I like him after this movie, especially as the Falcon. That moment when he's fighting and he like takes his wings and stabs them into the bad guy. I was like, dude, violent, vicious. I love it. I also heard in your in your podcast today that you like Hostel and Saw and all the Human Centipede and all that gory stuff. So
I see. Here's the thing. I don't like. I like those ones in particular, like the movies that are violent and gory for the sake of being violent and gory. Like a lot of the zombie movies are just boring to me. But for some reason, the original Saw, um, Human Centipede is so over the top. and ridiculous, and I love the character of the Doctor. That I just really like that movie for some reason. But in general, I'm not a huge gore fan. But those three that you mentioned are the exception to the rule. I'm more into the psychological horror stuff.
Did you watch Terrifier?
Um, is that the one with the clown?
Yeah.
No, I haven't. We almost watched it. We watched a movie called Terrified though. That's really good. It's a Spanish language movie. But yeah, Terrified is like a really good psychological kind of haunting movie. That you
Good
should.
jump scares?
There's some jump scares in it. Yeah.
Is it on Netflix?
I think it was on Amazon Prime. It might be on Netflix.
Okay, I got Amazon Prime too, so I'll check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then he passes on his shield to the Falcon. That's going to be the new Cap. Kind of would have liked to see Bucky and him talk a little bit more. Like they had the little moment before he went to the past, but I mean those two are like the buddies. I kind of wish they would have had a little bit more to say. You got your last scene with Hawkeye and pretty sure it's Scarlet Witch. Can't remember now, but they kind of basically talking about the people they lost and everything, and they have to move on, and it's nice. And then the final scene that we get of the movie is Steve Rogers with Peggy. I mean, that's that final dance that they wanted, that they never got, and you got to see it, and that's how the movie ended. And instantly, dude, like loud clapping in my theater. And this wasn't even opening weekend, so I can't imagine what that first showing would have been like. You know what I mean? I'm just too afraid to get shot, so I don't go to opening stuff like that. But
Yeah, I think yeah, there was clapping in the theater and we saw it. I think we saw it on Friday. And yeah, I mean it's just an awesome ending overall and super satisfying to see, Captain America be able to go back and live a good life with Peggy. My wife was a big fan of the Agent Carter series on TV, so she was happy to see that. And yeah, it was a good ending. All of the actors that I think their contracts are ending now, they had a really good send off in this movie.
agreed. I think it was very well done. I'm just gonna ask you a few more questions. One, who was your favorite character in the movie? And I don't mean like once all the Avengers came back and stuff. I'm talking like out of the main cast that we had. Who was your favorite character that got screen time and everything?
I think Fat Thor was the funnest to watch. those those scenes. Yeah, just seeing Thor struggle with that and try to come to terms with his failure in Infinity War was probably the most interesting storyline. So yeah, that's the one I liked. In general, if I were to choose like my favorite Avenger, I know someone in the comments asked this. I was a huge Spider-Man fan growing up, so I'd have to pick Spider-Man if I'd picked anyone in the movie.
Spider-Man's my favorite as well. I've always grown up drawing him and stuff, and really played his video games for the Nintendo. I still currently play my Super Nintendo. I have the Spider-Man games on there and stuff. Like I love Spider-Man, which is I really don't like his Iron Spider suit. I'm really looking forward to Spider-Man Far From Home. It's coming out soon because I'm ready to see him back in like a regular Spider-Man outfit. Um, I like Spider-Man, and I definitely after watching Spider-Man Homecoming was like, yeah, I think he's just as good as Tobey Maguire was. But after seeing Infinity War and now this movie, Tom Holland is definitely my favorite Spider-Man, straight up. Like, do you agree or no?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's the best um, actor and movie combination there's been. I think I liked in terms of the. I actually really liked Andrew Garfield. Was it Andrew Garfield? Is that who it was?
You mean like in the second installment of Spider-Man?
Yeah, in
Yeah.
the Amazing Spider-Man. I didn't
Yeah.
necessarily like that movie the best, but in terms of the character of Peter Parker at the age that he is in most of the comics. I think they got it closest there. Um, the one thing about um, the MCU version of Spider-Man is that it kind of um, negates some of the coolness of Peter Parker because he's so young in this version that it doesn't show off how smart and how much of a genius he is. In the comics, he's really like a counterpart to Tony Stark. I mean, he's also a genius and also an inventor, and so it's kind of they could have had another genius in these movies. It would have been, Tony Stark and Bruce Banner and Peter Parker, but um no, I really like this version of Spider-Man. And um was it Homecoming? Yeah, Homecoming was probably one of the best Spider-Man movies there's been so far, other than other than uh Into the Spider-Verse was pretty awesome too.
I just recently watched that, and I was like, "Oh man, I wish I watched that in theaters," because
Yeah.
it was really cool. Yeah, I agree. I think he's the coolest Spider-Man to date so far. Even though I mean, I got that soft spot in my heart for the Tobey Maguire number one and number two. I probably just really like the suit in those movies. But yeah, Spider-Man's definitely my favorite all-around Avenger. I think my favorite in this movie was uh, probably Thor too. I think I agree with you. My least favorite is Captain Marvel. She sucks. Even though I thought she looked kind of cool with her new haircut, honestly.
Yeah. The look was better. The character was just as boring to me.
Eh, agreed. Let's see. Did I have anything else I want to ask? I did. No, I can't remember. No, not really. I just want to ask you what you would rate this out of 10
um
on stars.
Are we talking about comparing to all movies of all time, or are we talking about superhero movies?
Let's do both. Let's do in the MCU and then all movies all around.
I
Five is like this was okay, and then like I kind of go off your rating system, like I heard you say today.
Oh
Episode.
yeah.
One is like sucked and you hated it. Five is like pretty average, and then 10 is like awesome. So
Yeah, I would probably put this one in the MCU. I would put this one at I would give it a 9 because I do think Infinity War was better, and there's been some other movies that are just perfect. And this wasn't perfect, but really really good. In terms of like all movies of all time, this would be like probably like an 8, 7 or an 8.
ooh, that's high.
Yeah, I mean, it's I can't think of another movie like it because you have a decade of lead up to it to where it's it has an aspect that no other movie can compete with. But also it's just really fun and a really good movie. It was really enjoyable to watch.
It was. Um, so you put Infinity War out of 22 movies. That's your favorite one.
I think that's yeah, I mean not maybe not my absolute favorite, but that deserves a 10 for me. That was like one of the greatest superhero movies that's ever been put out.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Um, I remember leaving the theaters unimpressed, but I remember going back and thinking about it and was like, I want to see that again. And then I watched it on Netflix like 2 or 3 times, and I'm like, it's not horrible now that I know, what the purpose of it is. It's a part one of part two, and what I think would have just definitely wouldn't have made as much money, so I can see why they would not do this. But what would have been really cool is if Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame came out at the same time and it was a 6-hour movie. Honestly.
Oh, yeah, that Yeah, I don't know. I think I think it was better to wait. It gave the ending of Infinity War more impact and built up a lot more demand for Endgame. Um,
What
yeah,
if they waited 2 months? Just 2 months.
I would maybe like the soonest I would put it out is maybe like 6 months after. That would give enough time for everyone to see the first one and really, really want to see the next one. Um, but I mean, it's hard to argue with what they did because it just set box office records. So, I mean, it worked. I'm not gonna second guess Disney.
Hey, I'm just thankful that they only took, like, a year, honestly, because, dude, honestly, like, when Avatar came out, I saw it, like, 3 times, I think, in the theaters, and then the sequel came out. Oh, wait, it still hasn't come out. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, the hype around Avatar was like, "This is the greatest movie I've ever seen." You know what I mean? Like, the effects, just everything, like, people went effing nuts. I remember I was, when it came out on DVD, my cousin and I were, we were at Best Buy, and it was a midnight release to buy it on DVD, and we were at Best Buy, and we were first in line, and the news crew was there, and we were on TV, and they interviewed us, like, about Avatar. And, I remember I was, like, on TV, and I was, like, so stoned. It was, like, hilarious. And, I just remember the hype was so big, and they were giving out free posters and, like, first 20 people get a free this and that, like, Avatar, Avatar, Avatar. And then I feel like Avatar 2 is coming out, like, I think in 2 years still, or next at least next year, but I think it's in 2020 or 2021, I don't remember. And, I don't think people are gonna give a crap, dude. Honestly, like you said earlier, the big thing about Avatar was the 3D effects. Everything's 3D now. Like, what are they gonna do to up that? They have to top their game. And honestly, who's gonna care about the story of Avatar? What is it? Like 14 years later? Like, do you
Yeah,
care?
I mean, I think I'm not sure what the story is, but here's why I'm sure the Avatar sequels will be good. It's because they're James Cameron movies. Like James Cameron just makes great movies and makes has made like two of the best sequels of all time. He made Aliens and Terminator 2. So, um I'm I'm pretty sure they'll be good, but in terms of like the lasting legacy of Avatar, I mean, I don't hear people talking about it um anymore. It was good. It was really big when it came out, but it's not, you know, other than the box office records, it's not like one of the most historic movies of all time.
Right. No, definitely not. And I know a lot of people are like, it's just Dances with Wolves and they're blue. Like I get the whole ripoff aspect of it and stuff, but I just feel like they're taking way too long to give us a sequel. And not only that, they're trying to give us like 5 sequels or at least 4. So, I mean, this is like gonna be like the rest of his life, like James Cameron's gonna give like the rest of his life to this movie pretty much, and like it better be effing worth it. But I guess my point of bringing up Avatar is that they're taking way too long, and I'm glad that Endgame took 1 year. Even with Game of Thrones, the pretty much the greatest show on television in history, and they took 2 years to give us this final season. And I can tell you that a month before April came and season 8 started, I was like, dude, I forgot all about what happened to Game of Thrones. Like, I'm gonna have to rewatch it. And I didn't have time to rewatch 7 whole seasons. So I watched like 2 seasons, and then I watched 30-minute recaps on YouTube for each season. And the stuff they were talking about, I was like, oh my God, like I forgot all of this stuff. I don't remember any of this stuff, because it was 2 years. I forgot everybody's names, house what, house this. Like I don't remember because they just took a really long time. And is it paying off? Yeah, so far, yeah, kind of. But I kind of feel like just give us stuff earlier. I know we come from that quote unquote entitled generation where, we're young and we need everything now. But I kind of feel like with certain things, you do kind of have to give it to us earlier than later. And I didn't want Endgame to be something that you just don't care as much about because it had been so long since you watched the first one, So I don't know. I'm happy. It came out a year later. I honestly wasn't excited going into this, and I'm so excited coming out of it that I was like desperate to want a podcast about this because of how much I enjoyed it. But let me get into my rating. You said what, like a 7.5 or 8 out of just movies?
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna give it a 7. And I really need to explain why I'm going to give it a 7. Not because this movie is 7 quality. This movie is 10 out of 10 quality for me. Maybe 9.85 because I just have a few questions about like time travel. But other than that, this movie is like almost a 10 out of 10 quality. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10 because of the first 2 hours of the movie. 2 reasons. One, like I said, halfway through, like I saw this movie, start time was 3 o'clock for this movie, so I probably started around 3:10ish. I looked at my phone at 5:30, and I was like, okay, like I don't see the hype around this movie. I don't understand why this movie's so amazing. It wasn't until all the Avengers came at the end that's when I was like, oh my god, yes, like then I got it. And the whole 2 hours building up to that moment just really worked. But it took 2 hours of a lot of talking, yes, it was cool to see the 2012 Avengers again. Go back to see Thor, go back to see Peter Quill, go back to see the Soul Stone, like it was cool to see all that stuff. But honestly, I was like, okay, let's go. Like, let's give me some cooler fight scenes. I need some bigger things happening to keep my interest in a movie this freaking long, And so I'm going to knock it down a little bit for that. And 2, it's getting a 7 because of rewatchability. This is not a movie I'm going to rewatch because I want to sit down and like watch a good movie again. This is a movie that I'm going to turn on and then fast forward to about halfway through the movie and watch from there. I'm going to watch the beginning, fast forward till they get all the stones, and then I'm going to press play. Like, because I don't want to watch all of the Gamora and whatever her face is, Nebula. I don't want to see all that stuff again. I don't need to see all of it again. I just want to watch the end fight scenes and stuff again. I'm probably not going to rewatch the entire movie over and over again, as I would with the very first Avengers or even Infinity War, So it's going to get a 7 for rewatchability and a little too long for me without enough action to kind of like even it out. But if you're talking about like the first time through watching it, it's a 10 out of 10 for me, but 7 out of 7 if I have to like put it on print. As far as the MCU ranking of this movie, this one's definitely top 3. I think Avengers is ultimately the number 1 for me because there's nothing I don't like about that movie. It's got every character that you like. It's got the cool classic costumes. It's got Loki back, when he was like just straight bad. And then I think this one's number 2, and Infinity War is probably 3, I think. And then the rest just kind of like are scattered around. That's probably how I feel about it. So yeah. Number 2 out of ranking and a 7 out of 10 for movie wise. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think probably most people will either like this one a little more than Infinity War, or will like Infinity War a little more than this one, just depending on how I guess nihilistic you are. I'm a little more lean towards the dark, so I like the dark ending of Infinity War. But yeah, they're right next to each other, definitely.
Yeah, I think honestly like those 2 movies can switch in and out of rankings for me just depending on my mood of the day. Like, do I want to watch something that leads up to something really sad, or do I want to watch something that starts off sad and leads up to something really good? I think it just depends on your mood. Um, because I think a lot of more of the movie was enjoyable of Infinity War, and then the ending for me was just kind of like a bummer. Not because I didn't like it, but just like, you know. And then with this one, I'd say majority of the movie wasn't as fun as the ending of the movie, where it was like you just end on like, well, first of all, you end because you're like crying, but before that, you're just like, this is the most orgasmic thing I can have with my eyes watching something. It was the coolest thing, and the only, I know we talked about this movie 8 times already, but the only thing I think that can compare to that moment when all the Avengers come and they say Avengers assemble is the end of Avatar, the moment when they're in the war with the humans and they think they're like all hope has failed, and the girl Navi, whatever her name is, she's like looking around and she sees like the animals dying and she sees people getting shot and dying and stuff. And then do you remember when like all of like the dragons and those big things are like flying up and they're fighting and she's like, Awa heard you. Like, do you remember all that?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that moment where you were just like chills and you're like, oh my God, yes. You know, like that was probably the closest moment I've ever felt in a movie to this movie. And I think this movie ruined Hollywood because I don't know if anything's going to be as cool as this again.
Yeah, I'm curious how Marvel is gonna follow
Top
up
it.
this. Yeah. But
I don't
keep in
know.
mind, Disney just bought Fox, and so that means that they own all of the X-Men and all of the Fantastic Four properties.
Yeah.
The only Marvel property that they don't outright own is Spider-Man, but they have a deal with Sony. So I think maybe not the next round, but pretty soon they'll start integrating X-Men into the MCU, and that's going to be pretty exciting. They just got done with a really big universe um, universe-wide storyline in the comics. Maybe not just got done, like several years ago. They did Avengers versus X-Men, so that would be probably a good storyline for them to draw off of in the future rounds of the MCU. But yeah, I'm curious to see where they're gonna go, because this is the culmination of like the last decade.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they really built it up. I think they did that completely right. You know, there's no way that Iron Man came out and earned over $1 billion. Like, there's no way Thor or Spider Man, none of those movies came out and earned $1 billion. It's because it was built to the legacy that it is. And like I told you, dude, I'm not the hugest MCU fan. I don't go nuts. I don't see every one of them opening night. I haven't even seen 2 or 3 of the MCU movies, but and I didn't really want to see this, but when I saw this, dude, I was like, dude, I'm an advocate for promoting this movie. Like, I've been telling people, have you seen Endgame? Like, no, dude, make time, see it. You know, like it's really worth the theater experience. Um, Funny story. When I when you buy D box seats, I would say like 9 out of 10 times it's for a 3D movie. So I walk up and I get my phone scanner thing and they scan it, and the guy gives me my tickets. And I'm like, "Oh, it's 3D." And he's like, "Oh." And he gives me my two pairs of glasses. I'm like, "Thanks." And I go in there and I'm watching the previews and stuff. And then, like, right when the movie starts or about to start, I rip open my glasses. I put my 3D glasses on. And my wife puts hers on. We're watching it. And I'm like, this really doesn't like pop. Like, there's nothing 3D looking about this. And then I take my glasses off for a second and I'm like, oh, it's not a 3D movie. And I look around and nobody else has glasses on. And my wife and I like pull our glasses off slowly, like shrinking into our seats. Like, I hope nobody saw us wearing these. Like, I didn't know it was not a 3D movie.
It's funny.
Yeah, kind of embarrassing, but yeah, man. Bryce, appreciate it, buddy. I'm real happy to have you on here, dude. I want to have you guys on more, honestly. Like, I really like enjoy having you guys on here. Gave a lot of great insight, a lot of great opinions. Real pleased with your presence on this podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I say this about a lot of my guests, whenever I have any, but I really want to push whoever's still listening to go check out Bryce and David's podcast, Horror Movie Talk. Go to their website, horrormovietalk.com. Subscribe to them on all different podcasts. Leave them reviews and ratings. They do horror movies, spectacular reviews. I'm telling you, like they are one of my favorite podcasts. I'll leave a link down below to your website. That's what you want me to leave, right? To your website.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome. And then everybody go over there and like check them out. Really cool. Is there anything you want to plug or anything you want to say? Any new episodes coming out soon?
We just released a new episode on just this last Wednesday on Evil Dead, the 2013 one.
Loved it.
This last month, April has been our biggest month so far, mostly because of Pet Cemetery. We reviewed the original Pet Cemetery and the new Pet Cemetery, and we have a great blog that compares the two. That's ranking really good on Google right now. But also we reviewed Us, and so there's been a lot of great horror movies that have come out recently that we reviewed. So yeah, check us out if you're a fan of horror movies. We try to make it fun. We try to take a deep dive into the content of the movie and pick apart what went well and what went bad. Sorry, David couldn't be on the podcast this time, but he's a great guy, and I really enjoyed doing the podcast with him. And thank you so much for having us on. We really enjoy your show too. And I'm glad that I can nerd out on these MCU movies and Endgame because David is not that into them. So yeah, let us know anytime that you need another guest, and we'll hop on.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully in the near future. I'm gonna try and start doing a little bit more podcasting. Trying to switch it up, dude. I love doing my narrations and stuff, but I love podcasting. That is truly my passion. I want to keep doing it as much as I can. So, like I said, I definitely want to have you and David, or David and you, whatever the case. Like, I like both you guys. I think both you guys contribute some really good advice. So, just like be on more. I want you guys on more, and let's just stay in contact a little bit more. Sounds good.
All right, awesome.
Yeah. Again, thanks for being on here, guys. Everybody, thanks for listening. This was the longest by far podcast I've ever done. But it was a 3-hour movie that we had to cover, and I hope we did some justice covering it and giving some good opinions. Everybody, we'll see you next time, and yeah, peace out, Holmes.